So, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 1. What if Izuku had Uchiha Quirk? Madara Reincarnated. But before I start, hit that subscribe button and join our crew. And do check out my other playlist. Now let's start the journey of Madara Uchiha in Hero World with new identity, along with Deadly Powerful Quirk. Chapter 1. Prelude to Rebirth. Who I was is not important. The name that I once bore is now meaningless, but it is important that one does not forget his origins. Therefore, I shall tell you a tale that will help you understand my origin. I was born on a world called Terra at the beginning of the second millennia of the Common Era. I grew up in a modest household with a loving family. I had no brothers or sisters, and my parents had long since cut ties with their own parents, so I had no grandparents. It did not bother me at all. Ever since I was able to think for myself, I knew that I was different. I saw things differently, I experienced the world at a different pace than the others of my age. By the time I was enrolled in a kindergarten, I was far beyond the mental level of my so-called peers. At first, I tried to integrate with them, to put up a false front for the sake of my loving parents, but it turned out to be too much, and it blew up after only a year. It was an unfortunate accident involving a kindergarten teacher and her annoying voice, as she tried to make me sing one of those stupid songs. It was difficult to convince my parents and my teachers that I was truly that smart. My parents, bless them, were normal people with normal jobs. Initially they thought that I was just a bit smarter than my peers and not the genius that I turned out to be. Still, it was worth it, if only to escape that annoying place. By the time I was 10, I finished middle school, and the whole academic world knew about me and touted me as the next great man of science of the world, and honestly, why wouldn't they? I made it no secret that I was fascinated with science, and even at 10 years old, I had the knowledge and understanding of people twice my age when it came to mathematics and chemistry. After middle school, I decided to spend a few years at home with tutors to teach me more esoteric subjects, such as engineering and computer programming and hardware creation. It was during that time that I fell in love with the world of anime and the main series of that time, Naruto. At first it was only to indulge in a more childish side of mine, but as time passed and I grew up alongside it, I began to wonder more and more about the fundamental mechanics of chakra and all its uses. The way it was used and what limitations would be placed upon it if it were real. I asked questions such as how and why, all the while trying to research with my imperfect understanding of the world if such an energy could exist, and if it did, where I would find it. By the time I was 16, I finished high school and was accepted into MIT. I pushed forward in my research and propelled human understanding of the universe to new heights. All in all, I wasn't all that special. Sure, I could see answers and get ideas faster than most other scientists, but most of my early work was more about building on the work that others have left for me. I continued like this until I was 25. Sure, I had some patents and inventions, but those were more for the money than anything else. Even with me building a lot of my own equipment by hand, my research still necessitated an exorbitant amount of money. Still, I had results and major success in my research. I could not see it then, but looking back now I can clearly see that I was laying the foundation for those that would come after me, filling in the gaps in human understanding and pushing forward bit by bit. New materials for buildings, new fabrics for clothes, stronger alloys that could better resist the stresses they were subjected to. My two greatest creations were the keys that unlocked a new age for Earth. I managed to create a room temperature superconductor. Well, calling it room temperature would be a bit much. It could work fine in room temperature, but its recommended temperature was about 10 degrees Celsius. Still, it was a vast improvement upon previous superconductors that had to be submerged in liquid nitrogen to properly function. With this technology, it allowed scientists to finally realize a stable fusion generator that would generate power instead of eating it up. My other great creation stemmed from my annoyance at the slow processing power of handheld computers. I felt that it was a hassle to use giant supercomputers even if it was necessary. In my annoyance, I created the Fist Photonic computer processor. Just like that, the world of electronics had a revolution on their hands. Still, among all my achievements, I never forgot the questions that 10-year-old me asked about this fictional power source called chakra. I learned to meditate, and I theorized about it. It was never in the forefront of my mind, always hiding beneath the real world and the now that was progressing the world of science. Still, it appears that not everyone was happy with progress. The incident happened when I was 29 as I was walking home from the lab. It is rather embarrassing, to be honest. As I was passing through an alleyway, I was grabbed by several thugs. This was a mugging, that much was obvious, but I didn't have my wallet on me. It was at home and I was hungry. One of the reasons that I took the shortcut through that alleyway was so that I could get home faster, so I could get my wallet and go out with my lab mates to eat dinner. When the thugs realized that I had no money, they shot me twice in the chest and left me to die. As I felt my life fading away, all I could think of was that question of chakra that had bugged me for almost 20 years. Is chakra real? I wish I had chakra. When I woke up it was 2 years later, in a new body and a new world. Being reborn was strange. It took me 6 months to fully adjust to this new world and life. It was the most excruciating time in my existence, to be honest, not even dying could top that. Anyways, back to my family. I had a loving mother and what appeared to be an absentee father, though by far the biggest change was my brother, Izuku Midoriya. Oh, I should probably mention my name in this world. I am Madara Midoriya, and no, that is not a joke, and as far as I can remember, I don't have any deep-seated trauma involving my younger brother and my best friend's younger brother killing each other or a stupidly convoluted plan to bring about world peace. I honestly think that I cried laugh for an hour after my mother called me by that name. Still, name aside, these past 6 months have been surprisingly fun. I never had that much of a bond with my parents in my previous life because honestly, they were just ordinary people and perfect parents for an ordinary boy. I was not an ordinary boy, not by a long shot. I could not stand mediocrity, one of the main reasons that I was antisocial in my last life. Then there is this aura around my younger brother. I have always had good intuition when it came to this type of things, and after spending more time with him, I found out that he was smart, very smart. Not quite my level, and he seemed to have this weird obsession with heroes, but he would still rank at the high end of the intelligence scale. That's another thing about this world that I have yet to mention. There are superpowers here. Honest to God, superpowers. It's like a dream come true. 80% of the world has one of these superpowers that they call quirks. Lame name, maybe, but who am I to judge? This euphoria lasted only a few minutes as the implications of these powers' existence entered my mind. Back in my original life, the amount of power a person could have was determined by the amount of money they had and the political connections they possessed. Here there was the added factor of their quirk, which seemed to vary from something as mundane as changing one's hair color at will to being able to punch away entire city blocks. Obviously there had to be a counter for those who abused their powers, and so the pro-heroes arose to counter the threat of the evil villains. By the time I turned 3 I had had more than enough of heroes and villains from my brother's rants. Honestly, was there nothing else interesting that child could focus on? Thank God I got through to my helicopter mom to stay out of kindergarten, because I think that I would have gone insane if I had to go through that again. After I proved to my mom that I wouldn't kill myself by staying at home all day and that, no, I really didn't need to interact with my peers in order to ensure my full and complete mental development, I was finally able to get some peace. Which was summarily shattered by this ball of brashness named Katsuki Bakugo, barging into my life with my brother on his heels, squealing about how cool he was and trailing behind him like some lovesick puppy. I looked at the two partially in disinterest and partially in exasperation as they barged into my room just as I was in the middle of a study session on the history of the Quirk Society. "Who's that, Izuku?" I asked, looking up from the books I had on the floor. "This is Kachin. He's my friend and he's the coolest of all the kids at the kindergarten," said Izuku with a cheer before turning to his friend who looked embarrassed. "Kachin, this is my older brother Madara," finished Izuku, puffing up his chest as he said that with all the pride his 3-year-old self could muster. I looked at the blonde kid. "Kachin?" I asked with a mildly surprised expression. "The flushed name's Katsuki Bakugo," he said, trying to be gruff and failing. I narrowed my eyes at him and glared. Bakugo stepped back a bit, but Izuku was unaffected. "Yeah, I could glare, even if this body made it sort of cute, but I don't have the name of the great baddest Madara Uchiha for nothing. A shame that those glares didn't work on that motor-mouth brother of mine." Not taking my eyes off Bakugo, I said. "Izuku, go get me something to drink from the fridge." "Aka-sen said," replied Izuku, fidgeting. "Izuku," I said, and he snapped straight. Right away, Madara and I," said Izuku, then bolted from the room. At least he listened to me. I continued my staring contest with Bakugo as I asserted my dominance over him. "Now, Bakugo, what did you want to say?" I asked sweetly. It's nice to meet you," he finished lamely. "That's good. You're learning, now be a good boy and take care of my brother, won't you?" I said. Bakugo had broken eye contact and simply nodded his head. He was shaking slightly. "I'm here, Madara and I brought you juice just like you asked," said Izuku as he bounced in the room, smiling. "Thanks, little brother, now go outside with your friend and play until mom comes back, okay?" I said, returning the smile. He nodded and dragged Katsuki out of the room. Still I could hear their conversation. "You never told me that your brother was this scary," said Katsuki. "He's not. He just makes some funny faces at people. There's nothing scary about that," replied Izuku. "Oh, you poor child, you have no idea what kind of man I am. True, I won't go to the villain's side anytime soon, but let's just say that my morality isn't that which you would find in a hero. Even so, I had to find out something that has been bugging me this last year. Ever since my awakening I have felt strange, as if there was something else in my body that I have yet to uncover. I am hoping that whatever it is can be discovered with the meditation techniques I learned in my previous life. It was thusly that one day I left the house and went to a secluded area in the nearby park and began meditating. I continued this process for 3 days, each day searching for this elusive feeling. On the 4th day I allowed my mind to wander to the question I had in my previous life. Is chakra real? It was then that something clicked inside of me, and I gasped as I felt power unlike any other flow through my veins. No, not veins, but something else. It took me another hour to get a good grip on this power, but once I did, I could clearly feel it, and I laughed. I had unlocked my chakra without any training or previous knowledge. Even among this quirk society, chakra was a most impressive power even if I never get to the level of monsters such as the cage or my own namesake. After half an hour of playing around with chakra I began to feel tired and went back home with a grin on my face. I spent the next year studying and training my chakra and growing my reserves. I honestly have no idea where I scale in the amount of chakra, but I'm going to wait until I'm at least 4.5 before doing anything more strenuous than meditation and chakra control exercises. I was happy. After some time, I was able to walk up walls with my chakra and I showed off to my family. After all, I had to do something with this power as I had no intention on hiding it, and having a power in this world was viewed as normal. My little family celebrated my quirk, and I have to say that it brought me closer to my brother than I had been with anyone in either life. I suppose that it was to be expected, we were twins after all, and we would always be close. However, this happiness would not last long. I showed off my power a few months before turning 4, the age at which most kids get their quirks. When mine and Izuku's 4th birthday came, my brother was still without power. I wasn't worried originally since I knew that my brother was never one to be average. However, as time passed my brother still hadn't gained his quirk and I was getting worried. If statistically speaking the average person got their quirks at 4, then it was understandable to have around about a 6-month buffer around that age in which most quirks would manifest. There were those that manifested at birth or earlier than the majority, but the more you aged the less likely it would be that you would awaken a quirk. Our family happiness was finally shattered shortly after our 5th birthday when mom took Izuku to the doctor and came back in several hours later with a catatonic Izuku and the dreaded result. My little brother was quirkless. My little brother that had smiles which could light up the room with his contagious happiness was no longer smiling. Was I wrong? I knew that my little brother wasn't destined to be normal from the moment I first laid eyes on him. Was I wrong about his prospects? Is he destined to be a quirkless loser, or is he destined for greatness that even I cannot comprehend? No, I can't think like that. Izuku needs me to be there and I will do my duty as his brother. I left my room, where I had retreated after our mom said the devastating news, in order to think. I headed for Izuku's room and I stopped at the door as I heard Izuku's question. Can I be a hero like him too, mom? I was ready to console him and say that he could be a hero and not to give up his hope. I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm so sorry, said my mom as she hugged him all the while crying. It was then that for the first time I felt rage, anger and hatred aimed at the person who brought me to life in this world. How dare she destroy my little brother's hope? How dare she crush his dreams so easily with her faithlessness? How dare she? I felt my vision clear, and the hallway that lit up in the dim light of the computer screen suddenly appeared as if the sun itself was shining from that screen. I could see every crevice and nook in the wooden floor, every imperfection on the wall, and I just knew that the image I was seeing in the mirror I had been glaring at would remain imprinted perfectly into my memory for eternity. Aburama Senju said it first. The Sharingan is an expression of one's very soul and the tragedy and trauma it had within. The greater the darkness and trauma of the soul, the greater the Sharingan's power would become. This is what I thought as I stared at my own reflection in the mirror. I had the same build as my brother, and usually I had green eyes just a shade darker than his. Now the same eyes were glowing blood red with a single tomo spinning around my pupil. I cut off the flow of chakra to my eyes, and the world fell out of phase, became less sharp, and I couldn't help but think about the power that I had brought in this world. I always knew that I was not an ordinary person, but the power I had the potential of possessing was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. I cannot coast through life as I have been doing. I knew in the rational part of my brain that I should probably stop my brother from doing something as foolish as attempting to be a hero, but my heart wouldn't let me do it. This left me just one option. Hey, little bro, I called out from the doorway, making both my brother and my mother look at me as I smiled at them. You can be a hero, with or without a quirk, and I'll be there to help you, every step of the way. I would do whatever I can to support my brother and his dream, and if that meant I had to turn my eyes of power upon the world to do it, then so be it. I will not let our bond break, even if I must go against the whole world to make it so. It began with segregation. Children refused to play with him, they teased him, and made fun of the fact that he was quirkless. The adults were even worse as they insisted on treating Izuku like some China doll or as an invalid. They say that 20% of the world's population is quirkless, but if you were to account for only the children our age, that percentage would go down to about 3%. That meant that a quirkless person could go his entire life without meeting another like him. Worse were the suppressed reports about the devastating consequences of bullying and discrimination on the quirkless. One scientist specializing in statistics published a paper on the deep web saying that less than 60% of quirkless children make it past their 10th birthday, dying either due to suicide, some misguided prank or attempt on their part to gain a quirk by putting themselves in danger, and even straight-up murder, most often than not perpetrated by their relatives. It said that 70% of homicides within a family were the result of a mother or father smothering their quirkless child. More worryingly, only half of those that made it past their 10th birthday survived past their 15th birthday, with most suicides happening a few days after the last high school offering a hero course in the country had finished giving out their admission test results, as there were laws against prohibiting the quirkless from applying, but it was obvious that no school would ever waste a spot on a quirkless person. After that they were lucky if they could get a job, and most bit the dust one way or another by the time they turned 30. It's been a little under 200 years since quirks first appeared in the world, and most of the quirkless population was aging and dying out. It was a tragedy to face such discrimination, but this is human nature. I have no doubt that when quirks first appeared, they were viewed as some satanic curse by some people, and quirk users were experimented on. Now the quirkless are facing the same, only that they are considered useless by society, and so they are shunned. Darwinism at its finest. It would be ironic if one of the people most dear to me wasn't stuck as a stepping stone for humanity's advancement. I don't want to have to go to my brother's funeral. At first, I tried to stem the tide of aggression against my brother. I walked with him to the kindergarten and I followed him everywhere, beating up kids that were foolish enough to pick on him. It really did wonders for my chakra control, as I figured out a way to enhance my physical abilities with chakra and boost my perception to the point that I could easily doge even some teenagers and adults. I had yet to show my Sharingan to the world. My brother resented my actions, that much was clear. At first, he said nothing. Izuku knew that I was doing this only to protect him, and it was that desire that fueled my will and ambition to grow more powerful. For that to happen, I needed to, ironically, become a hero in this society. I took it too far one time, and that night, after I got a half-hearted scolding from mother, he came into my room and asked me to stop. He said that I was becoming a villain, that I was going too far. As much as I hate to admit it, he was right. Flashback. What do you mean, stop? Didn't you see that they were about to hurt you? I asked desperately. Izuku looked at me with teary eyes. I know. It's just you went too far, Nai-san, they were really hurt. A hero should only fight to protect others, that's what All Might said Izuku. But I was protecting you. I cried out, hoping to make him understand. I know, but I don't want to be protected if it turns you into a villain, said Izuku. I stopped breathing for a moment and looked down at my fists. There were still traces of that kid's blood on my knuckles. I heave a sob. God damn these jeans, this is so unbecoming. Nai-san? Asked Izuku, reaching out towards me. I pulled him into a hug, to which my little brother replied instantly. I'm sorry, I whispered, I won't fight again, but promise me something, little brother. I felt Izuku nod. Don't ever lose hope in your dream. Whatever anyone tells you, whatever the heroes tell you, never lose hope. Can you promise me that? I whispered, not truly trusting my voice. I promise, Nai-san, came the choked reply. At night, as I held my crying little brother in my arms, I awoke the second tomo of my Sharingan, 1 year after I originally activated it. Flashback end. My greatest problem was in fact Bakugo. He gained a strong quirk called Explosion, which allowed him to secrete a nitroglycerin-like substance from his hands and blow it up. True, he couldn't do anything more impressive than a few sparks, but that kid had the will and ambition to make it a powerful weapon. When he found out Izuku was quirkless, he was somewhat subdued from his original brash nature, but he quickly cut ties with my brother, or at least tried to. Izuku was still clinging to him like a limpet, and it was evidently annoying the hell out of Bakugo. At least Bakugo had enough sense not to mess with Izuku beside one small scuffle and some mean words. After that scuffle I, of course, replied in full with a full expenses paid trip to the hospital. He never touched Izuku again, even if he still spat out insults left and right. I could tell that he knew I was watching and that he knew I was dangerous. By the time I turned 7 I had already tested out of elementary school and was well on my way to test out of middle school. My target was UA. I needed the prestige that came with graduating that school, even if for selfish reasons. They wouldn't accept a 10-year-old in their hero course, but it wasn't unheard of for a 14-year-old to be accepted, which would put me in the class 1 year higher than when I would normally have been admitted. I finally managed to pester my mom into giving me martial arts training. Chakra, unlike most strengthening and super strength quirks, couldn't compensate for a lack of knowledge in fighting. Its augmentation of a body's strength was subtle and required specialized techniques to use at full capacity. I also began to train my body's endurance. After all, chakra was formed from yin and yang, energy of the mind and body melding together into one. I also began to use chakra more extensively. I figured I could leave high-risk techniques like the 8 gates and chakra-intensive techniques like the Rasengan and Shadow clones for later, so I dedicated my time to recreating the work of Indra Otsutsuki in developing hand seals and ninjutsu. With the Sharingan at my disposal, I have access to its Eye of Insight and Eye of Hypnotism, and thusly I had access to visual genjutsu. Once I grow a bit, I could attempt to recreate Tsunade's famous super strength that could put me on par with the likes of All Might in terms of raw punching power, but my chakra control was probably not yet refined enough. Furthermore, I would need to have a comprehensive knowledge of the body in order to handle the recoil of such a technique. Truly, even at this early stage the Sharingan was a blessing. It may not have had the same visual acuity as the Byakugan when it came to seeing chakra, but I was able to see enough to recreate the full 12 hand seals by the time I turned 8 and was able to recreate the substitution and transformation techniques, as well as develop a sensing technique based on the same scientific understanding that gave humanity radar and sonar by the time I was 9. Still, even with my growing prowess in the martial arts, I was far from being able to contest with people who had had more time to grow and develop their abilities. Next on I moved to elemental manipulation, which I first delved into when I was 7. First off, I decided to go with fire release. It was a flashy power that made a big bang and was perfect for beginners. It helped that I seemed to have an almost supernatural awareness of chakra inside me, especially now that I had been practicing with it for the better part of 6 years. It was easy enough to get my chakra to burn stuff up, meaning that I probably have a natural affinity for fire, lucky me. Still, I could only work on fire release so many hours in a day, since I had to get to a lake deep in the forest surrounding the town, and I could only stay there for a maximum of 6 hours each day. I may have skipped normal education through my genius, but I was already planning to take university courses on stuff I hadn't in my past life, such as law, social science, economics and management. Incredibly important stuff if you want to be a successful pro hero. Even so, by the time I was 11 I already had several jutsu under my belt and a complete mastery of fire release. I was working on earth release next and then water release. I had managed to recreate, or better said create, the following fire style. Firewall, which was relatively low level and low in chakra cost, perfect for area denial. Fire style. Explosive mist, which was a rather surprising discovery, and it worked by unleashing a cloud of embers, which could be used as a smokescreen similarly to the hidden mist technique, but could also be remotely detonated, making it perfect for setting traps. Fire style. Great Fireball is pretty much self-explanatory, as well as its bigger cousin Fire style. Fire Dragon Bullet. These were my kill the enemy techniques, or they could be used for demolition purposes. I also developed an offshoot from the Great Fireball which I call Fire style. Flamethrower. I also learned to coat my hands in fire-natured chakra to aid in close combat. I have also developed other techniques such as a variation of the body flicker which I call Flash Step. It propels me to quite insane speeds, and because I can use it in any limb I wish instead of only in my legs, it grants me a degree of mobility that few in this world possess. I'm still working on some jutsu for my earth style, but I do have some ready. I'm now 13 years old, and I'm beginning to ponder greater aspect of my existence in this world as I look over the city from one of its tallest skyscrapers. The view was beautiful as the sun climbed over the horizon. It was early in the morning and quite chilly, but I enjoyed being up here, above the world as it were. Over the years I've kept my hair relatively short, unlike the mess my brother calls hair. Surprisingly enough, it didn't retain the green tint that my brother's hair has. I had dark pants and shoes with a dark green shirt and a black overcoat. I sensed a person coming before I heard their light footsteps on the roof. Eraserhead, I greeted the underground hero. "Problem child, what are you doing up here at this hour?" asked the hero. I met Eraserhead a few months back when I found him bleeding after a fight with one villain or another on the roof I used to frequent to watch the sunset. I took him to the hospital and left. A week later we ran into each other again on another rooftop. My talks with him weren't very deep or enlightening, but they were entertaining, and I think he enjoyed my company somewhat. The man was difficult to read. Unsurprisingly, considering this was only the 10th time we were meeting like this. "Watching the sunrise. It's beautiful up here, you know," I replied. He said nothing as he approached me. I noticed that he shifted into a combat stance. My face remained impassive, but I minutely shifted into my own combat stance. "You're good, who trained you?" asked the hero. I turned to half face him, not dropping my stance. He looked at me approvingly. "What's it to you?" I couldn't help but ask. I could see a minute grin on his face. It's a reasonable question to start a conversation, he replied. I eyed him a bit, flashing my 2-tomo Sharingan beneath the Genjutsu I used to hide them. He didn't seem like he was in an attacking stance, and he was far enough away that I could make a break for it if he tried anything. Here and there. Honestly, I just took what suited me best from a number of different styles and made my own, I replied with a shrug. He seemed surprised. That's impressive for a 12-year-old. I'm 13, you jackass. Don't act like you haven't read everything the government already had on me, I replied. Again, he seemed somewhat surprised. How did you know? He asked. I snorted. At least he didn't underestimate my intelligence. Not that big of a find, honestly, especially with how you seemed to be fishing for information in our previous meetings, and should I also mention your terrible stalking tendencies? Now, as you know my name, I believe that it's only reasonable that I know I replied. He grinned and laughed. I suppose that it was to be expected from one such as yourself, Madara Midoriya. I'm Aizawa Shota, but call me Eraserhead when we're in public, he said. He looked like he wanted to ask something but held himself back. Well, get on with it, I said. What do you want to be when you grow up? You've already destroyed the normal academic system, what's next on your list? He asked. I took my eyes off him and looked down at the school that was next to this building. It was early morning and there he was, I thought with a smile. I sensed Aizawa come up beside me. Getting a pro hero license, I said. Why? You could do much more with that brain of yours in any other field, such as science or engineering. I bet that support companies would be willing to go to war over you, said Aizawa, who appeared to be surprised by my declaration. I want to be able to use my power freely. Being a pro hero is the best course of action to take. Besides, look over there, I said as I pointed to the green-haired boy that was running on the sidewalk. The kid? He asked. Not just any kid, my brother. Twin to be precise, I said, and he said nothing ever since he was little. He wanted to be a hero, but he was deemed quirkless at 5. From then on everyone started telling him that his dream was impossible. I was the only one to tell him to have hope. That's kind of reckless, don't you think? Hero work is dangerous, without a quirk he could be killed, lectured Aizawa. I sighed. Aizawa was just laying out the facts logically. I couldn't afford to get angry over the truth. I know, I replied. I stayed silent for a moment. Do you know the statistics for hate crimes and discrimination against quirkless people? The unedited version, not the shit the government and media keep trying to sell us, I said. He winced and nodded. I refuse to bury my brother before he even becomes an adult just because society thinks he is useless and keeps trying to break him, I said darkly. That's kind of dark, Kitty replied. I shrugged. We stayed some time in silence. So, any thoughts as to where you're headed for a hero school? Asked Aizawa. The UA entrance exam is in 3 months, isn't it? My birthday is 3 weeks from now, I reply. Good luck, kid. I hope I see you at UA, said Aizawa as he left me on that rooftop. Once I couldn't sense him anymore, my body flickered away. The notoriety that comes with being a pro hero could be useful down the line when I begin my research into the depths of science and chakra in order to secure funding. And maybe, once I'm sure that I won't lose my brother because he finally cracked and did something stupid, I can settle down and continue my previous life's work or go see the wonders the world has to offer, who knows. It was time to learn the most iconic jutsu of all, the Rasengan. Learning the Rasengan was probably one of the hardest things I've done in my entire life so far. Even with a vivid description of the steps necessary and foreknowledge of how it should look and function, it took me all 3 months until the exam to get a usable product out of it. Honestly, it looks kind of pathetic, being only the size of a tennis ball and somewhat see-through, and it's so chakra intensive that I can only do 50 a day before I completely exhaust myself. If I want to truly compete with the powerhouses of this world, then I need to up my chakra capacity to at least cage levels of chakra from the likely low Jonin level that they were at now. And wasn't that a surprise? I honestly didn't think that I would have such a high level of chakra so early in my life. True, there were monsters like Kakashi and Itachi who had similar levels of power in their early days, but they were child soldiers. They had to grow up in a dangerous time, in one of the most dangerous, cruel and unforgiving worlds in fiction. Kakashi was a war veteran since he was 5, and Itachi was head of a black ops squad by the time he was 13. I, on the other hand, was a civilian who lives in a peaceful time and a mostly peaceful world. Which I believe is the reason why my Sharingan has yet to evolve to its 3-tomo stage, despite the training that I put myself through daily. The day was the day of the UA entrance exam. I felt a bit strange to walk among all these happy kids up the hill to the UA campus. Still, it's not too bad. The written part of the exam was laughably easy, and now all I must do is make a good showing in the practical portion, and I'm in. Apparently, the practical test involved fighting robots. Predictable, but understandable. The school had to differentiate between each student's battle capabilities, even if I sensed that something was off about the test when they explained the reason for the 10 pointers. It was a robot bigger and stronger than the rest, which would put him as a priority target for those with powerful quirks. This meant that a lot of the powerful quirk students, and especially those that have had their ego pumped up by those around them since they got their quirk Bakugo cough, will be going after them with little to no regard for the other students or the other villains. This put a lot of pressure on those with weaker quirks to deal with the lower rabble and protect the flank and rear of the ones attacking the bigger villains. It wasn't that difficult to see that UA wanted something other than raw power in their students, such as a brain or common sense and actual heroic talent, not just mindless destruction. However, I have my doubts if it will actually work. The moment the horn sounded, I was off through the gate in a flash step, leaving behind me a stunned crowd and after Imogen the screaming maniac of a radio presenter. I didn't bother with the Genjutsu covering my Sharingan this time. My file said I had a quirk named Energy Manipulation. It was true, somewhat, but I was still unsure if my chakra was a quirk or if it was something else. Hopefully it was something else. Quirks were too well researched for there to have not been someone with an idea about how to shut them off, or even worse, take use of them away. I returned to a relatively normal speed in front of the first 3-point robot in my path and smashed through it with a chakra-assisted kick. I was somewhat surprised at how little effort I had to put in to dispose of a robot that was touted as being the strongest of the regulars. I continued my rampage through the training ground as I kept on destroying more and more robots and saving a few people from being caught by a lucky robot or two. In the observation room upstairs, the faculty of UA was looking on in wonder at the black-clothed boy who seemed to be teleporting around the training ground, destroying robots and rescuing people without as much as a second thought. There seems to be some good students this year, mused Nezu. Yeah, no kidding. Who is this kid? Asked Present Mick. A pain in the ass, that's who, replied Eraserhead. You know him? Asked Mick, surprised. Izawa grunted a nod but stayed silent. So, what's he like? Come on Izawa, we're all dying to know, said Midnight. Yes, we all would like to know about this wonderful student, said Nezu. Just then the door opened and through it came the gaunt form of All Might, the symbol of peace. Hi everyone, sorry for the wait. So, what did I miss? Asked All Might. Nothing much, we were just talking about this kid, said Mick as he pointed at the screen where Madara was currently rescuing a student who had gotten in over his head while simultaneously smashing apart 2 1-pointers. All Might looked at the video and was impressed with the tenacity and battle prowess the boy showed. If he hadn't just arrived from an incident in which he discovered his successor, that kid would have been on the list. So, who is he? Asked All Might. Everyone looked at Izawa, who groaned. Fine, fine. Does anyone know the name Madara Midoriya? Asked Izawa. Midoriya? Is he related to young Izuku? Thought All Might, surprised. Yeah, I do, admitted Power Loader, he's an up-and-coming star in the scientific world. Never went to school, too smart for that. He finished high school at 10 and went on to get 5 doctorates in different fields. Economics, physics, engineering, quirkology and sociology. On top of that, I heard he was certified as a doctor a few months ago. He's already published several articles on physics that have most experts stumped. It's surprising that the kid would even want to be a hero. With that brain of his, he could be hailed as the next Einstein. The teachers were impressed at the extensive resume the young one had. That's not all he's good at, said Izawa. What do you mean? Asked All Might. Look at how he moves and fights. He has the skillset of a professional martial artist and a mentality to back it up. See how he never hesitates in a fight, and with that brain of his, he can make snap decisions and alterations to his plan. That level of tactical ability is unheard of in most pro heroes, let alone a kid his age, said Izawa. All Might took some time to watch the video carefully. He could see what Izawa said was true, the kid didn't fight like an amateur, but like a pro with a couple of years of experience. In a few years he could easily be one of the best hands-to-hand combatants in the world of heroes. Did you ever ask him why he wants to be a hero? Asked All Might without thinking. Izawa looked at him for a bit. Yeah. He said it was to get a hero license so he could use his quirk freely. He also said that his brother's dream was to be a hero and he wanted to get a head start on the hero program to help him out, said Izawa. What do you mean, a head start? Asked Midnight. The kid's 14, same as his twin brother, said Izawa. This stunned the teachers. Well, that's some dedication. If he's this powerful at 14, imagine what he'll do in a couple of years, said Mick. Izawa, did you ever ask what his brother's name was? Asked All Might. No, but his records show he had a younger twin by the name Izuku Midoriya, said Izawa as he returned his gaze to the monitors in preparation. The 10-pointers were to be unleashed. All Might closed his eyes and sighed. His successor of just a few hours was Izuku Midoriya, a quirkless boy with a dream to be a hero. There was a possibility that the name was just a coincidence, but that was a long shot. When he had spoken to young Midoriya after he rescued him for the second time, the boy had said he was the second person outside his brother to believe in his dream of being a hero. In a way, All Might was relieved that the bond between brothers was so strong and so deep. He hoped that it would stay that way and that this pair of brothers did not share the same fate as All for One and One for All. Meanwhile, I was firing on all cylinders as I tried to rally the other students against the proverbial horde of 10-pointers that were coming at us. I failed. Seriously, where did UA get the funds to build 50 robots the size of a house? Damn it. Hey, you, with the vibration quirk, can you soften the ground a bit? I asked the boy beside me as we were both panting. The other students had long since fled the front lines, leaving us to deal with this shit. No, I don't think so. Sorry, my quirk has a nasty aftershock effect and I've already used it too much, said the boy. I cursed in my head. Luckily all the robots were converging on the bigger threat Akemi. It seems that I would have no choice but to use jutsu. I've managed to get by so far relying only on taijutsu and chakra augmentation, along with liberal use of flash step. Look out. I heard a yell. I turned instantly to look to my left as time slowed for me. A piece of debris was speeding towards me at impossible speed, but somehow, I could keep track of it. In fact, my sight was even better than before. No time to think, if I use a substitution, the debris risks hitting the boy behind me, and I'm sure he's not as durable as I am. Without thinking I charged up a Rasengan in my hand and intercepted the debris in a flash step. I panted as I felt the drain on my reserves. The vibration boy was looking at me with wide eyes at the sight of what I just did. No time to think, there was a 10-pointer standing in front of me as it prepared to shoot missiles at me. Blurring through hand seals I unleashed the technique. Fire style. Great fireball. I spat out a fireball half the size of the 10-pointer aimed straight at his head which exploded in a brilliant show of fireworks, taking out the robot. I turned and glared at the rest of the horde of 10-pointers, my now 3 Tomo Sharingan spinning wildly. Earth style. Mobile core. I roared as I blurred through the hand seals and slammed my hands into the ground. With a great rumbling sound, the ground in front of me split apart in a parodic reenactment of an elevator as the 30 or so remaining 10-pointers went down deeper into the earth. I stopped the technique as I felt they reached a sufficient depth. Blurring through hand seals again, I slapped my palms once again on the ground and called out. Earth style. Bedrock shunt. The wide gap I had just formed was getting smaller as I moved the earth to crush the robots. I released the technique after I heard a satisfying thump, signifying that the earthen walls have met one another. A few moments later, the horn sounded to let us know that the test was finished. I fell to my knees in exhaustion, mostly mental, even if there was clear physical exhaustion on me. I still had about a third of my normal chakra reserves, so I was good on that front. I looked behind me at the shocked kid with the vibration quirk. Hey, you okay? I asked. He snapped out and looked at me and nodded. Can you walk? I asked. I think so, he said. He tried to stand, but apparently his balance got screwed up. Luckily enough I was near enough to him to help him stand straight. We walked in silence away from the devastation I had just caused. I dropped him off at the infirmary and after a small checkup from recovery girl, I was free to go and wait for my acceptance letter. As I walked back home, I turned on my phone and looked at the news feed. All Might was seen in town, a sludge villain attacked and was defeated by All Might but not before. I looked at the picture with a defeated sludge villain and there, covered in gunk was my little brother looking at All Might with a starry-eyed expression. What the fuck? Meanwhile, at the Midoriya household, Inko was humming along as she prepared Kitsundin for her 2 boys. Honestly, she couldn't be prouder of her boys. It was true that Madara was the star of the family, but that didn't mean that she didn't love Izuku just as much or maybe a tiny, but more than his brother. It wasn't that she didn't love Madara, but he had always been an independent child and so unlike his brother in temperament, always so serious and mature. It was funny until she started feeling like an idiot in the presence of a 7-year-old. Inko smiled as her youngest, Izuku, walked into the kitchen, hair still damp from the shower he had after that dreadful villain attack. Inko was happy to see that he wasn't the same scrawny boy he had been a year ago, even if it was mostly due to his brother dragging him along on his evening jogs around the block and making Izuku do a fitness regiment and diet to get him into shape. Oh, Izuku dear, can you please set the table for your brother when he comes home, said Inko. Nai-san is coming home? Asked Izuku with wide eyes and a big smile. It was somewhat unfortunate, but Madara wasn't usually home lately since he had been invited half a year ago to enter a research group at Tokyo University and commuting to and from their house and the university would have been very difficult, so he was given a small apartment on the university campus, 2 during the weekdays and the weekends when he is busy. Yes, dear. In fact, he should be here just about, said Inko as a cash was heard from the door and said door flew off its hinges and slammed on the wall at the end of the hallway. Now? Said Izuku with a giggle. Izuku? They heard Madara roar and practically tackle his younger brother who squeaked and stammered a greeting. After Madara was satisfied that his brother was in one piece and apologies for the door, he grabbed Izuku in a hug which was instinctually returned. Don't ever do something so reckless, little brother, I said after having finally calmed down and gotten the full story of the villain attack out of Izuku. Sorry, said Izuku, but I could tell he wasn't sorry. So, how was it, hero? I asked with a grin. Izuku blushed but returned the grin with that megawatt smile of his. As I looked at him, I could tell that he was happier than the last time I saw him. Something has happened. As if reading my mind, Izuku replied. I met All Might, Nai-san. He told me that he wanted me to be his successor. He told me that I could be a hero, said Izuku smiling. I was at a loss for words. And so, I did the only thing I could do in this situation. I hugged the life out of my little brother. Damn it, Izuku, here I wanted to surprise you and you have to go ahead and pull this sort of shit on me. I could feel tears in my eyes. I'm so proud of you, my little brother, the hero. I could hear Izuku crying now. I didn't really care, I was so happy. Finally, after all this time I would have my little brother back the way he was before he was deemed quirkless. I would no longer have to be worried about his mental state or the damage it sustained from all the bullying. After dinner we spent the whole night talking, just like we used to when we were little, just the two of us. Izuku told me all about One for All, the quirk that would be passed down to him by All Might, and how he would meet All Might tomorrow on the dumpster beach. I told him about my UA admission exam and how it happened. At the end of it all we ended up falling asleep in the same bed, something that we hadn't done in quite a while. Izuku used to have nightmares when he was little, and I used to crawl up next to him at night to help him sleep. There was no secret between us. I told him about my Sharingan and chakra when we were 9. I thought that he might be able to access chakra as well, but for some reason, even though he has the 8 gates, like any other human being for that matter, he still can't use chakra or even sense its presence. I think that I am the only one capable of manipulating chakra in this world. Tomorrow is a new day and soon I'll get to meet All Might. And thank him in person for giving my brother back his smile. Chapter 5. All Might in dealing with idiots. It was early morning. I was walking alongside my brother to meet with All Might. As I was walking, I wasn't saying anything, just enjoying my brother's company. Neither of us had many friends, but we made do with one another's company. I honestly enjoyed listening to my brother's mutter speech and rants when he got too excited and began thinking about heroes or any subject, to be honest. It's an acquired skill since in the beginning it used to be quite annoying. As we walked on the beach I came to face with the real form of All Might. Truthfully, my brother's words didn't quite manage to describe him good enough. If someone can do this much damage to the symbol of peace, then it's a grave problem, one I have the unfortunate feeling my brother would end up inheriting. All Might. Called out Izuku with a grin, waving his hand in a greeting. The hero returned his greeting, not taking his eyes off me for a second. I looked at him and I saw a flash of recognition and what appeared to be relief on his face. Strange. He must have watched a video of me from the entrance exam. Young Midoriya, I don't remember inviting anyone else today, said All Might. Izuku blushed and looked away. I'm sorry, All Might, said Izuku. No worries, now what's your name, young one? He asked. I raised an eyebrow at his frankly pathetic acting skills. If he wanted to pretend he didn't know me, or at least of me, then he should learn to mask his micro-expressions better. Also, is he seriously not scolding Izuku for sharing his secret with me? Though then again, he may have understood that it was inevitable for it to happen from yesterday's discussion with Izuku. My Sharingan flashed, displaying all 3 Tomo proudly as they spun around my pupil. I observed his body and I was quite surprised he was still walking with that kind of damage, let alone doing hero work. I turned off my eyes and gave a slight smile. I'm Madara Midoriya, but you already know that, didn't you, Toshinori-sen, I said. He seemed surprised but quickly deduced how I could have figured that out and smiled as well. I turned to my brother. Izuku, why don't you go and warm yourself up for training, I said. Okay, said Izuku and went off to the parking lot to begin his warm-up. He was shaping up to be such an obedient little brother. I dread the day he discovered his rebellious side. Young Midoriya, I began All Might before I interrupted him. Please call me Madara, and before you say anything else, I bowed before him. I want to thank you. What for? Asked All Might, genuinely surprised. I looked at him. When I finished the UA exam and I heard what happened, all I could think of was how devastated Izuku must have been, being utterly helpless in that situation. I saw from the footage that he wasn't injured, but still, he rushed into a situation trying to save someone's life, trying to be a hero. I rushed home as fast as I could, and the first thing I see when I walk into the house is my brother, smiling. I could feel my eyes growing moist. God damn these jeans, what is with me? All Might was looking away from me. Thank you for saving my brother's smile and giving him the hope that his dream can come true. For this I will be forever in your debt. Anything you ask, if it is within my power, I will see that it is done. I finished. All Might was still looking away with his fists clenched. I straightened up confused. I cannot accept your debt, said All Might lowly. I was surprised. What was he talking about? I doubt your brother has told you about this, but when we first met after I had saved him for the first time from that sludge villain, he ended up stuck to my pant leg. I was running out of time and he saw my true form. When he asked if he could become a hero without a quirk, I told him that he cannot and that he should look for another dream, said All Might with clear shame written on his face. I remained impassive. So even All Might himself is not immune to the growing anti-quirkless sentiment of society. I was there when the villain captured young Bakugo, standing in the crowd waiting for a real hero to arrive. It was your brother's reckless actions during that day, his body moving on its own, that rekindled that dying spark in my soul and reminded me that a hero should always try to save people, no matter what. It was that action that made me take him on as my successor, said All Might. I am unworthy of your thanks, let alone your debt. I was honestly at a loss for words, but I knew what I needed to say. All Might. I called his attention. He lifted his gaunt eyes and I smiled at him. We all make mistakes, after all we are only human. I understand where you are coming from, but you recognized your mistake and fixed it. You gave my brother hope. For that at least you have my thanks, I said as I held out my hand. All Might seemed so surprised and more than a little relieved. He rasped my outstretched hand and shook. I leave my brother in your care, All Might, I said. You will not regret it, young Madara, replied All Might. 1 week later. The letter from UA arrived and I was admitted with a most impressive score of 358 villain points and 65 rescue points, the highest score in UA history. Izuku was ecstatic, but I could see a somewhat pinched expression on All Might's face when I told him. Apparently, he held the previous record and I just shattered it so hard it wasn't even funny anymore. I sometimes came to watch Izuku's training even if I wasn't slaking on my own. These next few weeks before the start of school would be put to good use, especially now that I have recreated one of the most OP hacks jutsu of all time. Shadow clones. True, I could only produce 3, and that ate up most of my chakra reserves, but man oh man was it worth it. I had 5 weeks until school started and by the time my first class began, I already had water release almost fully mastered. What at one time would have taken me 4 months or more, as was the case with fire release, I could do in a month. I hadn't yet had the time to create any water jutsu, but that was surprisingly quite easy after the first few I created. Once I know how the elemental chakra felt and how it reacted to the various hand seals, it was only a matter of finding the right combination to achieve the desired result with minimal wastage of chakra. I walked into my class 1 and as I saw the mayhem that was unfolding before me, I began to wonder if I made a mistake. The acceptance letter said that I was in class 1 under Aizawa Shotoaka Racerhead. I find it difficult to imagine the man being patient enough to deal with this rowdy bunch. Boy, you get in your seat. You're stealing my spotlight, yelled out a guy from behind me. I moved simply because I was too stunned by his arrogance to be able to come up with a reply that wouldn't have him blowing up at me. Stunned into silence, my presence, I see. Well, no matter, I am sure I could always find a spot at my agency for a sidekick like yourself, said the guy. The fuck? Just then from the corner of my eye I saw what appeared to be a human caterpillar with Aizawa's face. The actual fuck? The man gave me a tired smile as if he could somehow understand my pain. I doubted. The jackass was probably cracking himself up on the inside with laughter. How the hell did a class like this get into UA? How? It took the class 10 minutes to notice the yellow human caterpillar at our door and quiet down. Good morning, I'm your homeroom teacher Shota Aizawa. Put on these uniforms and meet me outside, said Aizawa. Outside? But, sensei, staying in the sun without preparing my hair first could ruin it. Aren't we supposed to be having orientation today? Asked one of the girls. Are you kidding me? What is this, an acting school? Yeah, teach, what's the big deal, said another student, and oh look, stereotypical macho bully. How lovely. Okay then. You two are expelled, said Aizawa in a calm voice. What? Screamed the whole class minus me. You can't do that, said the girl. Yes, I can. UA is different from other schools. You have a problem, you take it up with the principal, said Aizawa in a bored tone. I will, said the girl as she took her purse and left through the door, followed by the guy that got expelled. Jesus effing Christ, is this a dream? How the fuck did guys like these ever get past the entrance exam? The rest of you meet me outside for your quirk apprehension test, said Aizawa. Before anyone could say a thing, I was out of my seat and vanished in a body flicker to the locker room. 1 minute later I flickered back into reality near Izuku in the training ground. Was that really necessary? I ask. Izuku gives me a bored look before schooling his face into something more serious. I need to know if they have potential to be a hero. It took them 10 minutes to notice me outside the door, you noticed me almost instantly. If I had been a villain, they would be dead, said Izuku. I grunted and nodded. I got where Izuku was coming from. Being a pro-hero was dangerous, and the least he could do was to deny the honestly incompetent a free suicide attempt and ruining the school's image with their deaths. After 10 minutes I was starting to get annoyed, and I wasn't the only one. If Izuku had the Mangekyou there would be no more door to the locker rooms. I spread out my senses, and I felt my entire class still in the locker room with no one waiting near the exit. Oh, come on. I said, not really realizing it. What, said Izuku, turning his glare onto me. One of my abilities is that I can sense the location of people within a 1 kilometer radius if I really concentrate. I can also recognize people that I have met before and spent a bit of time in their presence, I explained. And, said Izuku, looking intrigued and a little annoyed. I sighed and facepumped my classmates, they're still in the locker room, and some are even going to and from the locker room and the classroom. Izuku's face tightened. Well, then let's begin the quirk test. The person who doesn't meet my expectations will be expelled, said Izuku. Sensei, shouldn't we still wait for them? I asked, somewhat unsure. We waited enough, was the prompt reply. It took me 15 minutes to get through all the tests. Izuku just wrote down the results and called it a day. I was the only one who took the test. I went home that day feeling more than a little awkward. The next morning's headline was the mass expulsion of 19 students from class 1 and my existence as the sole student that got to be mentored by all the pros. How lovely. Chapter 6. Interlude, the butterfly effect. It has been said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a typhoon halfway around the world. Chaos theory. To many people, Katsuki Bakugo would come off as a loud, brash child with a great quirk. A perfect candidate to be enrolled at any hero school. What not many people realized was that under that brash exterior laid an intelligent mind that was to be feared. Even very young, Katsuki understood the way that society was structured and that despite what his parents and teachers would claim, no one was created equal. He first understood this when he met his childhood friend's elder twin brother. When Katsuki first met Madara, he thought the boy to be a mere nerd stuck within books all day and weak. The glare he had been pinned under while the boy delivered his unspoken threat was anything but weak. When Madara first got his quirk, it wasn't really that impressive, and yet the boy still managed to beat everyone that came against him with his genius mind and cunning schemes. Katsuki respected him for that. Madara was not weak, not by a long shot. When it came time for elementary school, Katsuki asked Izuku where his brother is. Izuku said that he tested out of elementary school and was on his way to test out of middle school as well. It was then that Katsuki understood on what level Madara truly was. Still, he was determined to beat him. After all, he can't be the #1 hero if he can't beat the smart guy with the useless quirk. Katsuki would quickly learn that he was not the only special one. Madara was too. When the news came that Izuku was quirkless, Katsuki was at a loss again. Izuku was Madara's brother, his twin. Whenever Izuku wasn't with Katsuki, he was with Madara. How could the brother of such a special person be useless? Katsuki tried distancing himself from Izuku. He called him Deku now, meaning useless. He shunned him, and yet the other boy kept on clinging to him. One day Katsuki was out and about putting down the extras that thought they could challenge him when Deku stepped in to protect one. Katsuki was mad. How dare the Deku try and play the hero? He was weak, quirkless, and had to be protected. That was his place in society. Sure, he was better than all the other extras because of his smarts, and he would make an invaluable asset later on as a support techie for Katsuki, but he would still be a civilian. This was Katsuki's origin story, not Deku's. That day he sent the nerd home with a black eye and burns on his hands. It was a mistake he would never repeat. True, Izuku was powerless, but Madara was not, and for better or worse, Madara was like Katsuki in many ways. He won at any cost and ensured that his enemy couldn't rise again to threaten what he held most dear. The beating Madara gave Katsuki that day was one Katsuki remembers even now as the only time in his life that he honestly thought he would die, before the sludge villain that is. At the end of it he came out with a broken arm and wrist, a sprained ankle and a body that was more of a walking bruise. Katsuki told his mother that he got caught up in a gang fight but managed to escape. For the next month he could feel Madara's eyes on his back the entire time. Deku was keeping him company though, and Madara was always along as his brother's personal bodyguard. It came to the point that no one was willing to even talk to Deku for fear of what his brother might do to them if they said the wrong thing. This kept going on until Deku finally put his foot down just like he did with Katsuki. At first Katsuki thought that Madara would beat the little nerd black and blue for talking like that to him when he was doing his job as a hero and protecting Deku, but he only nodded and left. He was never seen again intimidating people to not bully Deku. Once again Katsuki was confused. Why did Madara listen? He was smarter, stronger and had a quirk. He was better than Deku in every way, so why did Madara listen to what was supposed to be an extra in his life? Deku was meant to be a background character in the stories of Katsuki and Madara, so why did Madara listen to Deku? Katsuki didn't know the answer, but he decided that if Madara the genius listened to Deku, then there might be some value in what Deku said and Katsuki should listen too. Katsuki did and immediately saw an increase in his performance in the use of his quirk. Deku was not that useless, but still useless. Whatever, Deku was Deku no matter how you took it. It would be years later that Katsuki would see another shift in his worldview. A student managed to absolutely shatter All Might's record score at the UA entrance exam. The student's name. Madara Midoriya. The week after that was an absolute frenzy as all the extras crowded Deku to get some pointers on how his brother got this strong. Still, Katsuki's respect for Madara only increased. To have enough power to beat All Might's record and at a younger age than when All Might took the exam himself meant that you had incredible power and potential. Another shock came a few weeks later when 19 students from UA's famous Class A were expelled, leaving only one. Madara Midoriya. There were those that said the teacher was biased, but those extras had no place in UA in the first place. Must have been a bad year if this was the cream of the crop. There was a Class B, but their quirks were not that well suited for direct combat, not like Madara's. Katsuki had seen the leaked footage of Madara using the ground on those robots and crushing them like some trash compactor. Then there was Deku. He seemed happier suddenly, and his eyes had this fire in them that he had only seen in Madara before him or the time before Deku was deemed quirkless. He was also dead tired and had scrapes and bruises from what was obviously combat training. The nerd had probably asked his brother to train him or failed that asked some teachers at UA about where he could seek training. One thing was clear to Katsuki. This year's sport festival would be interesting. To Izuku, Madara was more than his brother, he was his anchor. His big brother was the first person to tell him that he could be a hero, and he was the only one that never doubted him. Madara always made time to play or spend time with Izuku. Izuku knew that if he ever had a problem he could not deal with, then his brother would be by his side and willing to devote all his strength to help him in whatever way he could. Be it letting Izuku cry himself to sleep in his bed, Madara himself staying the night with him when he had a nightmare, helping him with schoolwork, dispatching the horde of bullies that thought to take him on, teaching him how to defend himself, and giving him advice on how to best train in order to take up the mantle as All Might's successor. When Izuku was 9, Madara told him about his quirk that was probably not a quirk. He told him of how his eyes could see chakra in him and how he could see something called the 8 gates in Izuku. Madara said that the 8 gates were like valves that controlled a person's chakra and stopped them from exploding from the inside, but they could be opened if you knew how, and it will grant you a boost in power enough to beat even All Might. Izuku wanted to doubt that anything could beat All Might, but Madara had never lied to him and was rarely wrong about anything. Even so, the cost of opening all of them was death, so Izuku was understanding when Madara told him flat out that he wouldn't teach him the 8 gates if he had a choice. Izuku tried to meditate and unlock his chakra, but nothing happened. It was more than a little frustrating for both brothers since Madara kept powering forwards, discovering new and innovating ways to use chakra while Izuku was stuck. In the end the two of them decided to use a more forceful method to unlock Izuku's chakra. One summer break rolled around, since Madara had refused to let Izuku have chakra without supervision. Then, on the day of the UA entrance exam, while his brother secretly went to take it, Izuku met All Might who had offered his own quirk, one for all, to Izuku, as well as the mantle of successor to the symbol of peace, after witnessing his actions and dedication to save Kacchin. It made Izuku so very happy. He would finally get a quirk of his own, and his brother would stop worrying so much about him, not that it wasn't nice that he cared so much. Madara had always cared. Even their mom was willing to look away and not investigate Izuku's injuries, any more than accepting the standard "I tripped" excuse or taking his slightly ruffled state as children roughhousing when he had been beaten up. But Madara wasn't like that. He always asked where he got even the slightest bruise, and Izuku knew he couldn't lie to his brother to save his life, but he was grateful for Madara's overprotective tendencies, even if he got a bit carried out in doling justice to the bullies. At least he could rein in his temper, unlike Kacchin. Speaking of his sort of friend, Izuku knew that the time Kacchin came to kindergarten all busted up was because he had a run-in with his brother. Izuku hadn't cared enough to notice at the time, and when Madara went too far again he asked him to stop. And he stopped, so Izuku knew he could trust his brother with anything. It was why he broke his promise to All Might and told Madara about him and one for all. In the end even All Might admitted that Madara's guidance during that first month of training, as well as the previous training Madara had all but forced on Izuku, would pay off well. Who knows, maybe Izuku would be ready to receive one for all before the entrance exam, since Madara didn't seem too fond of letting him into the exam, with only some martial arts skills and an untested power. The popularity he got at school because of his brother's success was a bonus, somewhat. It brought him back on speaking terms with Kachin at the very least. Sure, it involved some shouting, but Izuku was used to the caustic personality that came with the package deal that was Katsuki Bakugo. Their relationship would never be fully mended, not yet at least, but they weren't clashing with one another each time they saw each other. Madara had told Izuku that Katsuki's violent actions and bullying of others was his way of dealing with a world that wouldn't align with his mental image of how it should look like. The world where the weak stayed weak and the strong rise to the top, and on that top was Kachin. Obviously not, since the top spot would inevitably fall into Madara's lap before his brother got bored of it and let others take it for themselves, but honestly, Izuku was okay with that. Madara never lorded his superiority in anything over anyone, save perhaps some old cots at the university who couldn't accept that they were wrong and always did his best to raise those around him up alongside him. In Izuku's eyes, Madara was the one that should take the position of All Might's successor, but when he broached that subject with his brother all he got was a pat on the head, a smile, and the simple words "I believe in you." Izuku knew that this meant his brother had entrusted him with the legacy of All Might fully, as well as a shard of his very own will and legacy. Izuku would do his best to not fail his mentor and brother, the two most important people in his life. Chapter 7. First day, or how Madara made heroes shit themselves. Being in school after you spent the better part of 2 lives dodging it was somewhat surreal. Especially since I was the only student in class 1A. In a way this was better than being in a class with students my age, or close to it, especially given that I've already graduated high school and I get bored easily. That's why I spent the entire morning bouncing from class to class and letting my teachers evaluate my skills. At the end of each class the teachers looked somewhat constipated and some of them looked at me with an unreadable expression on their face. What? Did you expect me to go easy on them? I'm a certified genius with multiple diplomas, I don't need to be taught English, I'm already fluent in 7 languages. Thankfully it was time for hero basic training with Aizawa, since the man became my unofficial mentor. I came into the training ground dressed in my new battle armor. I spent a lot of time arguing over my costume design with the people from the support department. Thankfully I won the argument. Now most kids would order some flashy costume with a few support items on the side to amp up their quirks in battle. I needed no such amp. Chakra is the undisputed ultimate tool for war in this superpowered world. My costume, if you could call it that, was simply armor. It was good looking, not overly flashy, and most importantly of all, functional. I had a 2-part costume made from Kevlar reinforced materials. Tear-proof and somewhat bulletproof. Alongside that were specially designed flexible plastic ceramic plates weaved into my suit. These were designed to stop bullets and shrapnel from penetrating through the cloth layer. I also had shin guards, a chest and back plate, and shoulder guards with a high collar to protect my neck. All these were made from thin and highly resistant composites and, while they offered protection, were mostly there to serve as anchor points for any other weapons and items I might add in the future. I also had full gloves with metal inserts for increased punching power and reinforced armored boots for the same reason. The suit was black with the overlaying armor a dark gray, but having patterns of red lines over them. Say what you will, the armor had to look good so that my hero image is marketable. Is that shallow? Maybe, but it was an undisputed truth in the hero industry, and with my original plans for UA utterly destroyed, I might as well become the best hero I can be. I always dislike doing things halfway anyways. Aizawa looked at me impressed. I suppose it should have expected it, problem child, said Aizawa in a bored tone. Again, with that nickname, what on earth is he talking about? I am a perfect model student. Though by his smirk I can probably deduce that he is amused by my reaction to the nickname. What? Did you honestly expect me to just order up a piece of brightly colored spandex and some padded gloves? I asked. That's what most kids would do if they had a quirk like yours, said Aizawa. Well, most kids are idiots, I replied. The man huffed and put his hands in his pockets. Okay then, welcome to Hero Basics. For today I want to test the full extent of your combat power and try to see how it applies to situations you might have to face in the future, said Aizawa. So basically, today is show and tell, I said. Aizawa looked distinctively unimpressed. I sighed. Okay, what do you want to know? I asked. What is your quirk? And please tell me the truth, not that half-assed bullshit you wrote down in the official paperwork, asked Aizawa. I sat and thought for a moment. I could lie and tell him some bullshit story, but I felt I could trust this guy and it would be better in the long term if I tell him the truth. Plus, I get to mess with him. Heh. Don't know, I said. Izawa looked annoyed. You don't know, he repeated slowly, trying to see if he understood me correctly. Yes, I don't know if I have a quirk, I replied. Now Izawa looked confused, annoyed, and lost at the same time. Your quirk can shut down other emitter quirks, the area of quirks that my abilities would fall under, correct, I said. He nodded, not truly seeing where I was going with this. Use your quirk on me, I said. Izawa waits a bit before his eyes turn red and his hair stands up. I bring up right hand and form a Rasengan in my palm. Izawa looks at me, then at the Rasengan. He blinks and turns on his power again, but nothing happens. After a minute he shuts off his power and I dispel the Rasengan. So I am quirkless then, I said nonchalantly. Good to know. This means that my value just skyrocketed and I'm in no danger of losing my power to quirk suppressants or other dangers. Problem child, what the fuck is wrong with you? Asked Izawa. Don't know, I'm just that awesome, I said. How can you be quirkless? I saw you split the earth apart and spit out a fireball in the entrance exam. How the fuck is that not a quirk? Yelled Izawa, looking like he was just about to have a meltdown. That is chakra, I said. Huh? Says Izawa, completely lost. The power I used is called chakra. I was always sensitive to its existence, and originally, I just assumed it was a quirk, but as I grew, I began to develop more and more facets to it. For example, chakra boosts my physical strength, speed, endurance, perception and durability as a passive effect of having it inside my body. If I mold it in the correct way, those boosts become more pronounced to the point that I can compete with people like All Might. I can also mold chakra in techniques such as the fireball and earth techniques you saw me use in the exam, I said. So, it's just like an enhancement quirk with some added bonuses? Asked Izawa. Not quite. As far as I understand it, chakra is formed by combining a person's physical and mental energies in the form of yin and yang. By manipulating these specific energies, a chakra wielder can form yin release or yang release, which when combined gives yin-yang release, which is a way to assert absolute control over one's own self, mind and body, and thusly, you can affect the world in ways quirks will never be able to. I don't know why I can use chakra, but I do know that every human being on this planet had the theoretical potential to use chakra, I said. Everyone? Asked Izawa, surprised. Yes, everyone, however when I tried to teach my brother chakra, he couldn't unlock it and connect his mental and physical energies like I could, I said. But you could, in theory, teach anyone about chakra and how to use it, said Izawa. In theory, if I find out how to get past the natural block against chakra, I could, but I don't think that's a good idea, I said. Why? Asked Izawa. I looked at him. I had to make him understand that the level of power a chakra wielder was able of dishing out was far beyond what this world could manage. Chakra makes me a perfect combatant. With enough chakra and skill, anyone, and I mean anyone, could bring down mountains and destroy cities. Quirks, for better or for worse, don't have that kind of power, I said. Do you? Asked Izawa. Not quite yet, but it's not long before I do, I answered. Izawa looked at me before nodding. Okay, that changes things. Go back and change into something normal. Meet me in the principal's office in half an hour, said Izawa. I nodded and vanished in a body flicker. Half an hour later I was in the meeting room near the principal's office with the principal, Nezu, Izawa, and the rest of the teachers looking at me with interest. Madara, you know why you're here, began Izawa. Actually no, I don't, I replied. You committed a crime when you did not register your quirk properly with the Hero Association, said Vlad King sternly. I thought I just proved that I'm quirkless, I said. That doesn't matter. Before you found this out you were content to leave your quirk description as energy manipulation. Still, you know of the potential this chakra power of yours had if what little you said to Eraserhead is true. Now I'm not blaming you for this, said Nezu. But sir, interjected Vlad King. All Might himself hasn't ascribed his quirk fully to the Hero Association, and yet he is still the world's #1 hero. It's not truly a crime to be vague about one's power, and that is what our student did, said Nezu. The principal looked at me expectantly. I sighed and activated my Sharingan. I looked at the teachers with these eyes of mine, and I saw them grow somewhat uneasy by my stare. When I first discovered the true full potential of my powers, I was ecstatic. My powers are of such a level that when fully mastered I doubt that even All Might at his prime could stop me, or any truly powerful wielder of chakra for that matter, I said. This brought some worried looks on the teachers' faces. Only Izawa's remained stone cold. That doesn't answer the question as to why you kept it a secret, said Nezu. We live in an era of quirks where almost any person can have any ability. Is it that far-fetched to believe that there is someone out there with the power to take and give quirks at will? I asked. There was an uneasy silence in the room before finally Izawa broke it. When did you figure this out? He asked. When I was 7, after my eyes reached their second tomo and I discovered the elemental manipulation aspect of my chakra, I replied truthfully. Well, it's not so much discovered as it was foreknowledge and finally having a chakra pool of enough quantity and the freedom to be alone for long periods of time so I could start my elemental manipulation training. Elemental manipulation? Asked Present Mick surprised. I wanted to reply to him, but Nezu cut me off. That's not important now. Now, Madara, you are correct in your assumption. There was once a person with this quirk. He was known as All for One, said Nezu. It took me only a moment to see the connection. You have got to be shitting me, I said as I looked at Nezu in horror. He nodded, the smile leaving his face. God damn it, All Might. I want my brother to be a hero, but that doesn't mean he has to be on the front lines against a quirk-stealing madman that is more than likely over 100 years old. I see you put the gist of the story together, but don't worry, All Might killed him 5 years ago, said Nezu. Well, that's a relief. Somewhat. At least I now know who did that much damage to All Might. I remained silent as I mulled the problem in my head. Okay, so I get why the kid did it, but we still can't teach him all he needs to know about being a hero if he insists on hiding his true abilities from us, said Vlad. I don't think that's the case, said Nezu smiling. If he wanted to hide, he wouldn't have told Eraserhead about his theory or asked him to help test it. I looked at Izawa, who just gave a bored shrug. I just thought it would be easier to have you presented only once, said the bastard. You, I have no words, sensei. Truly, I said. Anyways, let's hear it. I'm dying to know about this, said Snipe. Firstly, I want your word that this will not spread outside of UA. This knowledge that I'm about to share is dangerous, I said. You have our word, said Nezu as the others nodded. Right. As I told Izawa-sensei, chakra is formed from mental energies, yin, and physical energies, yang, I said. We know, Izawa told us about your potential with yin-yang release, as you call it, said Midnight. I snorted. You know nothing of the amount of power a user of yin-yang release has. Just as an example, one of the techniques I theorize might be possible is called creation of all things, I said. Add in truth-seeking orbs and 6 paths age mode and other crazy bullshit that come as a package with it. The teachers felt chills down their spines at their students' words. Anyways, I split up the abilities of chakra in 3 main categories. Taijutsu, ninjutsu and jinjutsu, I said. I noticed that Nezu looked very interested and that ectoplasm had a clone with a pen in hand taking notes. Taijutsu is the art of augmenting one's body with chakra to boost one's power and speed. You saw me use taijutsu for most of the entrance exam. This is the form of chakra usage I have most experience in using, since performing taijutsu doesn't require actual chakra usage. I managed to create a style of combat separate from the one which you saw me use in the exam, which I call Gentle Fist, I said. How's it different? Asked Midnight. Gentle Fist relies on precise strikes on an opponent's body to inject chakra so that it would do damage to his muscles, nerves and internal organs without actually harming the skin. Useful against hardening type quirk users and others that rely on their skin as a form of protection. In contrast, the Strong Fist, which you saw me use in the exam, focuses on dealing external damage using chakra to augment my own body's strength, speed and durability, I said. Stealing the style of the Hyuga clan was a pain, but there were martial artists that taught me the precision required for the Gentle Fist, and since it doesn't need to shut down chakra nodes, a Sharingan has sufficient visual acuity to use it. The rest was me practicing on stumps in the forest and wild animals that I had hunted. Aokinaka Strong Fist was easier since that was just punching the shit out of people, and there were plenty of styles that did that and worked wonderfully when I added chakra to them. That is impressive, said Vlad King. Having 2 distinct fighting styles almost mastered by 14 was a feat no one truly expected of a student. Thank you, but I'm not finished. Through the careful use of chakra to coat my fist or foot and its explosive release from a compressed state, a single punch from me using Strong Fist is able to do damage close to that of one of All Might's punches if I wanted to, I said. What? Seriously? Asked Mick. I nodded. By my calculations, if I increase the compression ratio of the chakra I use in my super strength technique, I should be able to pulverize a small mountain in a single punch. Tsunade super strength for the win. The teachers looked somewhat nervous at that. Well, that's certainly impressive, what about, said Cementos, but I cut him off. I'm not finished, I said. The hushed silence fell on the room. The final technique I have for taijutsu is one I have yet to try to develop because of the inherent danger it poses, not only to those around me but to myself as well, I said. I call it the 8 inner gates. What does it do? Asked Recovery Girl. At any given time, I use at most 20% of my full power. The 8 gates are limiters my body has in place to ensure this limit is kept, I said. Don't tell me, began Izawa, dreading the answer. I nodded. This technique allows me to open these gates and bring out the full power of my body, however it comes at the cost of incredible pain and ligament damage if overused, I said. Plus ultra, am I right? Said Mick, trying and failing to dispel the gloomy atmosphere. Each gate is named for a specific thing it unlocks. The gate of opening allows the use of 100% of a person's muscle. The gate of healing re-energizes the body, allowing you to fight through exhaustion. The gate of life brings your cardiovascular system to full capacity to ensure proper nutrition and oxygenation of the body. The gate of pain disables the body's normal pain receptors and boosts pain tolerance to inhuman levels, but it begins to damage the muscles. The gate of limit boosts all abilities, including those that fall under the category of ninjutsu, but it can cause stress fractures in the bones. The 6th gate of view is a further boost added onto the gate of limit as the user begins to emit an aura of chakra. I theorize that anyone who achieves this level or at least the previous one will be able to physically contend with All Might as he is now one-on-one, I said. I let that sink in. The room was silent and I was looked at in reserved awe while Izawa looked slightly terrified. The 7th gate of wonder will cause the body to start overheating, the user gaining a blue aura as their own seat begins to evaporate. At this level the user can create air blasts powerful enough to destroy entire cities, I said. The Hiradora comes to mind in this situation. The teachers looked shocked. I don't think I even want to know about the last one, mumbled a sweating present Mick. The 8th gate grants one power tens of times stronger than the 7th. It is the ultimate power an average human being can wield, but it comes at the greatest of all costs, I said. Dear Lord, don't tell me, said a trembling recovery girl. Death is the price of using the final stage of the 8th gate formation by unlocking the full power of the 8th gate of death. It grants one the power to enact their dying will, their final resolution when all is lost, and there is no other way than to sacrifice oneself for the greater good. When opened, the user will be cloaked in a shroud of blood-red vapor formed from his own boiling blood. The full use of the 8 gates will last anywhere from 5 minutes to half an hour, depending on how fast the user burns through his chakra reserves, I said. This was the technique that Might Guy used to deal an almost deadly blow to Six Paths Madara. Nothing in this world can match such power, not yet at least. By this point even the principal was sweating. What you described right now, that's a suicide technique, said Ectoplasm with mild horror in his voice. Bear in mind, this is only theoretical, but I haven't been wrong before and I know I'm not wrong now. The 8 gates can only be used to their fullest if one dedicates their entire lives to mastering and studying the strong fist jutsu style. Not something I plan on doing when I have other options, I said. There's more. Shit, kid, what kind of monster are you? Asked Mick looking at me with scared eyes. The good kind. Now can I continue? I asked. Yes, go on, said Nezu. Ninjutsu is any kind of technique that involves using chakra to make alteration to the physical world. Firstly, you must understand that mastering chakra comes with certain requirements, such as being able to control it. By increasing my control over chakra, I can modulate the power, area of effect and size of my ninjutsu, while also boosting to jutsu. I have pretty good chakra control which allows me to use chakra to stick myself to any vertical or horizontal surface and walk on water, I said. Come on. That's seriously unfair. You can walk on water, yelled out Mick as he threw his hands in the air. Calm down, Mick, said Izawa. Come on, Shota, how can you be so calm? The kid's already a monster in hand-to-hand combat and now he tells me there's more than shooting fireballs. He can walk on water for fuck's sake. At this rate we might as well call the kid a god and be done with it, yelled Mick. I hummed, well actually. Don't you dare answer that, problem child. Snapped Izawa at me while the rest of the teachers looked horrified at me. Can I go on? There's still much more to cover, I said. Izawa glared at Mick, who wisely shut up and returned to his seat from where he had shot up on 2 feet. Continue please, said Nezu. Right, that's chakra control. It also helps boost my chakra capacity since chakra's like a muscle. Based on my chakra capacity I have a finite number of techniques I can use before I need to rest and eat to replenish it. Moving on is chakra shape manipulation, I said. The teachers looked at me as I raised my hand and on it a Rasengan bloomed to life with a whirl. I saw everyone in the room in awe at the small rotating ball of power. This is the Rasengan and it's a technique I originally designed to help me better understand chakra shape manipulation. However, it can be used to strike at an opponent and get though one's defense, since it shreds whatever it touches, I said. Utter bullshit for the first part, but the truth for the second. The teachers leaned back from the dangerous little ball, as if it was about to bite them. Still, it's incomplete, I said. Incomplete? Asked Midnight. Yeah, the component necessary to complete it is nature transformation and elemental manipulation, I said. Izawa and Mick smashed their head in the table with a groan and a silent prayer of kill me now. I continued nonplussed. There are 5 main nature types from what I've found with possible subtypes that I've yet to discover. The main are fire, wind, lightning, earth and water. So far, I have only mastered fire, earth and water release, I said. I raised my hand and on it a flicker of flame appeared, a bit of earth was sitting and water was flowing in a circle. Ectoplasm and Midnight joined Aizawa and Mick in banging their heads on the table, while Nezu had a highly distinctive sheen of sweat on his fur. Next up there are the actual techniques I created through the use of hand seals, I said. Hand seals? Asked Nezu curiously. Yeah, I discovered that certain movements of my hands have a distinct impact on my chakra that helps mold it into what I want faster than doing it by pure willpower, and it's more precise in execution, as well as wasting less chakra. So far, I have only a few elemental ninjutsu and some supplementary ones. None of them are water style though since I just finished mastering it before the semester started, I said. I think I'm going to die, whispered Mick. Oh, please, you have one class with problem child, I'm his homeroom teacher, spat out Aizawa. I winced. God, how pathetic can they be? Anyways, my elemental ninjutsu so far are only god for dealing damage or other tasks that require excessive force, so I have other jutsu to compensate, such as the body flicker and flash step, I said. What do they do? Asked Nezu curiously. They're mostly the same and mobility based. Basically, they allow me to move at high speeds. I only use flash step in combat though since it's too impractical over long distance, and I never meant for it to be used as anything other than fast relocation on the battlefield, I said. Oh, good, and the last one, you said it was Genjutsu? Asked Nezu with a hopeful expression. No, I have more, I said. Nezu's expression froze as I continued. I have the replacement technique which allows me to replace myself with objects of a similar mass almost instantly to get out of the way of an attack. Then there's the transformation technique, which is a type of illusion that I cast over my body to look like someone or something else, and there is the shadow clones, I said. Shadow clones? Asked Ectoplasm. I out my hands in the iconic sign, and beside me two clones burst into existence. Shadow clones are solid chakra constructs of the wielder, capable of independent intelligent action and being able to utilize the entire skillset of the caster. They suffer from a lack of durability though, since one good hit is enough to pop it, I said, and demonstrated by punching the clone on my right. They can also be used for scouting or to accelerate learning, since they transfer all they learn back to the user when they are dispelled, along with any remaining chakra they might have. I can only do 4 at a time now since they're so taxing on my chakra. Nezu was openly crying, and the other teachers were equally looking at me as if I committed some grave sin against the world. Is there more? Asked Nezu. Only Genjutsu and Sharingan, I said. Aizawa sobbed. Anyways, Genjutsu is the art of casting illusions with chakra, and as far as I can tell, there's no limit to what I can do with it, and it can only be undone by either extreme willpower, pain or a small pulse of chakra, I said. So, perfect unbreakable illusions on top of everything else? Asked Cementos. Yes. I answers asked. Cementos looked to the sky. This is God punishing us for our sins, he said. I sweat dropped. Can't these guys be more optimistic? Anyways, I still have to talk about my Sharingan, I said. And what godly technique is that? Asked Aizawa sarcastically. It's not a technique, I said. This piqued their interest and I waited until they were all looking at me in the eyes. Everything I've said so far can be learned by everyone if they put their back into it enough. The Sharingan can't be learned, I said. So, what is the Sharingan? Asked Aizawa. These are, I said, pointing at my eyes. Everyone looked confused. They are a special ocular power unique to me and me alone, since as far as I know my brother can't awaken them, I said. Aizawa choked and went white along with the rest of the teachers. You have a brother, whispered Midnight as if she's suddenly remembering something. The twin actually, I said. Vlad was crying. Don't worry, he can't use chakra, I said. I peeved me a little to see the entire room breathe a sigh of release. In fact, he's training right now with all might to strengthen his newfound quirk, I said with a sadistic grin. Oh, said Nezu as the teachers paled again. Serves them right, jackasses. Yeah, well anyways, these eyes of mine grant me access to 2 abilities, the Eye of Insight and the Eye of Hypnotism, I said. The entire room looked resigned. The Eye of Insight allows the bearer to see through the movements of an enemy and increases one's perception to such levels that even a decent chakra wielder can't stand up against a competent Sharingan bearer in a one-on-one Taijutsu match. They can also see chakra and allow the bearer to recall instantly and perfectly everything they've seen with a Sharingan to the point that they can copy Taijutsu moves. It also removes the usual weakness of tunnel vision that I would have had when using body flicker and flash step, I said and pause. The teachers looked at me blankly. Right, the Eye of Hypnotism allows me to cast illusion though eye contact, and I suspect it allows me to hypnotize people into doing what I want, such as giving me information. I haven't tried it yet, but I think I can use them to cast illusions on my opponent mid-battle and get him to mess up to gain an opening, I said. Anything else? Asked Nezu, who was still crying. Not really, oh yes. I can also use my chakra as a sonar to sense people, and I can recognize them based on their chakra signatures, and I still must tell you about those two forbidden techniques I said. Forbidden techniques? Asked Recovery Girl with a noticeable amount of dread. I nodded. Izanami and Izanagi, two techniques that are only available to Sharingan users, and I call them forbidden because they have the same relative cost as the 8 gates I said. The teachers shivered. The first one is Izanagi. With this technique the user can alter reality and turn it into an illusion and turn illusion into reality. It's a jutsu that has the power to decide fate, and it can even restore the dead I said. The teachers looked like they've been slapped as they looked at me with horror. Such power, whispered Midnight. Izanagi is a technique based in yin-yang release. This should give you an idea of just how powerful chakra is I said. But still, to rewrite reality in such a way that you can bring back the dead, whispered Izawa. The cost of using this technique is the loss of sight within one eye. I suspect that if I ever use this technique would be because I died I said. The teachers shivered at my words. And Izanami? Honestly Madara, I'm afraid to ask said Nezu. If Izanagi is the jutsu that alters fate, then Izanami is the one which decides fate. When cast a target is stuck within an infinite loop until they take the correct course of action that the caster intended. Izanami also causes blindness within one eye I said. I fell silent as I waited for a reply. It took some time before Izawa spoke up. Overpowered problem child, you can go home for today. We need to have a talk, so come back tomorrow, okay? Asked Izawa. Okay I said and vanished in a body flicker. I returned to normal speed outside UA and grinned with a murder face that had almost every student in the vicinity running away screaming, and my namesake probably feeling very satisfied with himself wherever he was. Messing with the teachers was fun. Furthermore, I needed them to realize just how powerful I am and could be. Still, if they reacted like this to the snippets of information about Izanami and Izanagi, I don't think that their hearts would survive if I told them about the Manjikyu Sharingan or Rinnegan and their broken up abilities. Ever since the day that I met All Might at the beach I've been thinking, and because my plan to coast OUA is mostly shot to hell and back, I might as well do something relatively out of the ordinary for me. I'm going to take All Might's place as the pillar that supports society. The man is at the end of his time anyways and Izuku won't be ready to take on the burden anytime soon. I need to think about the new information I gained about the so-called king of the underworld. All for one, your time is done and I will see your legacy shattered. Chapter. Dealing with the overpowered problem child. Izawa wasn't sure what got he offended in order to get stuck with the overpowered problem child as the single student in this year's class that had enough potential to be a hero. It just wasn't fair. The boy was quirkless, not that Izawa had anything against them, but they were the people in most danger in this world. If even half of what Madara said was true, then any person in the world could theoretically use chakra. If one looks at it logically it was only a matter of time before someone like Madara came along and cracked open the floodgates to a whole new realm of undiscovered abilities. Furthermore, the sheer versatility of chakra places it in a league of its own and its users in the same bracket of power as top pro heroes, maybe even surpassing it. Physical augmentations to the point that the punching power and durability of the user was enough to rival All Might and the best hardening quirk out there, perception augmentation to the level that a normal person would have no chance against a chakra wielder, maybe even requiring the likes of Sir Night-Eye to beat it, and that is only with just basic chakra. If Madara managed to make his 8 gates formation technique work for him without killing him or inflicting self-harm, then that physical power would shoot up beyond what any other person bar another chakra wielder, and maybe All Might could manage. And that's not even taking in consideration the problem of ninjutsu. Being able to bend the elements to your will, nigh unparalleled 3-dimensional mobility, insane burst speeds that make you appear as if you're teleporting, extremely powerful localized attacks, and those are just the basics. Even a fraction of these abilities would make a hero powerful enough to take a spot in the top 10, having all of them on top of a genius mind that could devise ways in order to use them most effectively was a nightmarish combination. For the villains that is. Not for the first time, Izawa thanked whatever god was out there for making one of Madara's goals to protect his naive and self-preservation, lacking hero-worshipping brother. Now, Izawa didn't really know if that was truly the case, but given the fact that he was chosen to be All Might's apprentice by the man himself came with an almost certain guarantee that Izuku Midoriya will be another problem child. Probably overpowered as well. But for now, it was his older twin that Izawa had to deal with. Izawa yet again thanked whatever god there was that Madara seemed to not care about villains very much, or at least was partial to the hero side, and not the villain one. So, who here thinks that we just dodged a bullet on this kid? Asked Snipe. Izawa raised his hand along with every other teacher in the room. Yes, we dodged a most dangerous bullet. If Madara were to switch sides and become a villain, it could be the end of hero society as we know it, said Nezu. We can't allow that to happen. If he can teach others to use chakra, we might be facing a crisis not seen since the first time quirks appeared in the world, said Vlad. Indeed. We can be thankful that Madara knows of this danger of doing so and has promised to not share chakra with anyone, said Nezu. Anyone but his brother, you mean, said Izawa. The other teachers looked at him blankly. Do you honestly think that he will let his brother loose in the hero industry without trying everything in his power to make him more powerful? Asked Izawa. You have a point, Eraser, but the kid told us himself that his brother was unable to use chakra, said Vlad. He probably meant that he was unable to use chakra on his own. After all, even if chakra is a borderline supernatural ability, the presence of the 8 gate suggests that it's rooted in biology. It may just be possible that Madara never thought or found a way to unlock the chakra of a person from the outside, since he trained with his power in utmost secrecy before the entrance exam, said Nezu. You're probably right, but we should still call All Might and tell him about what the kid told us when concerning chakra. After all, the man is training his brother, said Midnight. Agreed, I'll call All Might at once. I'll say this again, we must keep hidden what was discussed here today. It would be quite disastrous if the villains or the Hero Commission were to find out about our students, said Nezu. The teachers nodded. The political aspect of hero life coming to the forefront of their minds. More importantly, what are we going to do with the overpowered problem child? Asked Izawa. Even if you don't add chakra to the mix, I can almost bet that he will blast through everything we have him study. This is the kid that regularly attends the nation's top science conferences, for God's sake. Becky came to UA just so he can say that he graduated the best hero course in the country and gain a license to use his so-called quirk. You're most correct, said Nezu. Still, we can't overlook this opportunity to see how a genius will flourish under the direct tutoring of multiple pro heroes. Izawa groaned. It was just typical of the principal to turn a problematic situation into an experiment. Anyways, there was a lot to get done in preparation for tomorrow's meeting with the problem child. In another part of town, I was walking down the street towards Takoba Beach. Even now, barely a month and a half into his training, my brother has made visible progress. Though this is mostly because I took a personal interest in his fitness since he was 13. After all, a great mind must have a body to match. I have another 3 months until my summer break. I believe that my brother can finish cleaning this entire beach by January at the latest. That will give him another month and a half, depending on when he finishes it, before the exam. I finally reach the parking lot and see All Might's car there. I look down to see my brother in the middle of dragging a very heavy piece of furniture across the sand and to the pile that I will most likely have to bury into the ground with my earth style. Looking at it, I should probably do that now, before it becomes too big. Young Madara, what are you doing here? Asked the emaciated All Might from down where he was observing Izuku. Oh, nothing. I just came to see how your training was going, I said. All Might accepted the answer with a nod. So, should I do something to deal with that pile of trash? I asked, pointing at the mountain of trash my brother was currently building. Can you? Asked All Might, surprised. In a way, yeah. I can sink it like I did the 10 pointers and crush it, or I can move it into a container, I said. I think I have some people I can call to arrange transport for the trash, said All Might. We fell into silence, but I could feel something tense about it. I spoke with the principal of UA today, said All Might, finally breaking the silence. Oh? I asked, somewhat surprised. I never imagined that your power was something other than a quirk, or that it can be so versatile and powerful, said All Might, looking somewhat pained. In a way, I can say that I'm jealous of you. You see, I too was quirkless before I gained one for all. I was so surprised that I couldn't speak. All Might was quirkless. That sort of explains the attitude he had when he originally met Izuku and the sense of kindship I felt between the two. You managed to unlock the hidden potential of every human being, and at such a young age, said All Might. I don't think that's the case, I said. This gained All Might's attention. The only quirkless person I could study was my brother, and he never managed to unlock his chakra. I never told anyone this, but to my eyes his 8 gates shine brighter than other people. In fact, the greater the power of one's quirk, the dimmer the 8 gates are, I said. Do you think that it's connected with why we haven't discovered chakra? Asked All Might. In a way. I think that the quirk factor actively blocks a body from merging their yin and yang energies to form chakra and uses that energy to power itself. I think I can brute force this block, but I don't want to try anything that might hurt the chances my brother has for success in this world. I'm afraid that your quirk will have to be enough, at least until I learn more about chakra, I said. From the lecture you gave the teachers on your power, I think you know it pretty well, said All Might. Not really. I don't know how I know of Izanami and Izanagi beyond the fact that I woke up one day and I just knew. In the same way I just know that there's more to chakra than what I have discovered, I said. Explanation was mostly bullshit wrapped with a layer of truth. After all, I couldn't just say that I'm a reborn 20-something-year-old genius man from a world with no superpowers that gets to live with a power he's only read about in manga when he was young. I saw All Might shiver. I can guess what he's thinking about. You're worried I'll turn in another all for one, I say. All Might snaps his head to me so fast that worry for his neck. How do you know that name? Asked All Might in a whisper. I looked him in the eye. I theorized a possible existence of his quirk when I was 7 and discovers elemental ninjutsu. It's one of the reasons I'm so secretive about my abilities. If it turned out that my chakra was a quirk, then how much more powerful do you think All for One could have become? I asked. Too powerful, whispered All Might. I know that there's some connection between All of One and One for All. I hope you know what you're doing because I don't want my brother to have to inherit your war, one said. He won't. I made sure of that, replied All Might with fire in his eyes. Somehow, I'm not so sure. At any rate, if it does come down to a war between heroes and villains, just so you know, I won't abide by society's no-kill rule, I said coldly. What? Asked All Might, surprised. I'm sorry, All Might, but in war there is no place for mercy. That doesn't mean that I will kill every low-life I encounter, but just know that I won't hold back my power just for the sake of not killing anyone, I said. I'm not a monster, but if a few happen to get incinerated by my great fireball or drowned by my water techniques, I won't bat an eye. Oh, I see. You had me worried for a moment there, young Madara, said All Might, looking strangely relieved. Do you believe we're headed for a war? Seriously? I just told him that I'm willing to kill villains, which, well, technically not against the law for a pro hero, it's usually avoided for the sake of their image and because you have to have a very good reason as to why you killed that person. I honestly don't know, but it never hurts to be ready, especially with the symbol of peace on his last legs, I said. There is talk of pushing for an early graduation with your class, said All Might, trying to change the subject. I snorted. You mean with me? Is this the principal's attempt to test if it's better to have mentored students rather than full classes? I asked. Maybe, said All Might, failing miserably to hide his nervousness. Whatever, keep training Izuku. He has to get a handle of one of all before we send him the entrance exam, I said. I left the beach. I too needed to train and create some jutsu for water release, and by the end of the school year, it was a must to master all 5 elements and begin my work on Jinten, dust release. Having a technique that can disintegrate matter would be useful. It's unfortunate, but this entire situation utterly destroyed my original plans for the future. My Sharingan flashed as I looked back at All Might. The power within him was dimming, and I doubt that it will last another 4 to 5 years for there to be a peaceful transition of power between him and Izuku. Sigh. The things I do for the sake of peace. I really hate that I'll have to play this role, but I'll play it nonetheless. I'll become the pillar of strength that the world needs until you're ready to take that role from me, Izuku. Chapter. Sports Festival. It was about a month later that Izawa came into the room with a couple of folders in hand and told me to get ready for the UA Sports Festival. Honestly, I don't know what to think of it. In some ways I can understand why professional sports events like the Olympics banned the use of quirks in their events. Quirks were too varied, too wild and uncontrollable, but they were also a novelty, and if humanity loves one thing, it's a new shiny thing it can play with. Still, I have a few doubts as to why this event involves 15-year-old kids from the nation's top hero school. I mean, I get why the third years are in the sport festival, it helps with their brand and allows them to draw attention from the bigger hero agencies and other corporations that are willing to sponsor an aspiring hero. Heck, I can stretch it to second years as well, but first years? Not everyone is me or even Bakugo, since I know that the kid has battle instincts that would be praiseworthy in any martial arts club, but the rest of the students. They barely have a month of training to use their quirks offensively. Heck, they even lack basic combat training, something that is especially difficult to surpass if you're in the general course, since they don't get a heroics class, and whatever PE that they do is standardized across all non-hero high schools. Let me put this into perspective. I scored well over 300 points in the exam, and the majority of those were villain points. This was not very surprising since I trained my butt off and abused the hell out of my Sharingan for years to get to this level of martial ability. Not everyone began their training at 6 years old. In fact, the next score after I was a measly 67 points, out of which only about 40 were villain points. Heck, the lowest score that was admitted into heroics was 30 points, out of which 22 were villain point and 8 were rescue points. Talk about being overpowered. And to be honest, their quirks would most likely get stronger with age, but so again will my chakra. Right now, I'm just entering puberty. In about 2 to 3 years, I would have expanded my reserves of chakra exponentially from their already relatively massive size, and alongside quantity, the quality will also be improved. My chakra will be denser, making my jutsu that much more powerful. Anyways, enough about my moaning. In this month I have managed to get the school to let me do my own thing. They really don't have anything other than hero law to teach me, and even that is most often than not something that I already know. I did train in PR and combat, and otherwise I mostly developed new jutsu for my water style, fire style, and earth style. I also sparred with All Might once and managed to hold my own, though to be fair he was holding back quite a bit while I was doing my very best to beat him. Still, I managed to push him in a way no one before All for One really did. That fills me with hope. I may not be on the level of monsters like All Might or All for One, but at least I'm capable enough to take down and beat several of the more high-ranking heroes and villains. At least that's what Izawa-sensei and Nezu tell me and was confirmed by All Might. I swear, Izuku couldn't stop fanboying over me when I told him this, and judging by the smug looks he was sending Katsuki for the next few days, and Katsuki's brooding, I figured that he was just happy to know that I'll be one of the great heroes of Japan. The things I'd do for the sake of stability in this world. First though, I must deal with this sports festival. Ugh. I was currently waiting for the festival to begin in Class 1A's lockers. It was kind of lonely, being the only one in my class. I didn't realize it before, but I was relying quite a lot on Izuku to keep me company. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy solitude more than I normally should, but I'm beginning to miss the arguments I used to have with my brother over even the most insignificant detail. There wasn't really any heat in those arguments, just two brilliant minds bouncing ideas off one another. Did I mention that Izuku was brilliant? Sure, he's not on my level, but he's still far above the rest of the commoners he calls classmates, even Katsuki. I suspect that's the reason he's so prickly with Izuku, and I'm sure that were it not for my intervention and threat to kill him and his family, should anything happen to Izuku, he would have bullied all of Izuku's self-confidence out of him. "Hey, kid, you ready?" asked Izawa from the doorway. "Yeah, let's get this over with," I said with mild disinterest. I walked down the tunnel to the arena while putting on my gloved forearm guards. A neat little thing to keep me from hurting myself too much into jutsu and to keep my arms intact. Developing two-handed hand seals was enough of a pain in the ass, one I have no desire in repeating with its more difficult sibling in the form of one-handed seals. As I entered the stadium, I was assaulted with the roar of the crowd in the stands. And here we have, ladies and gentlemen, the only student to pass Eraserhead's tests. The current holder to the record of highest entrance exam score in UA history, a record that previously belonged to All Might. Here to deliver the athlete's oath is the genius child that makes even the best and brightest look like idiots, Madara Midoriya. Yelled out President Mick through the speakers. "Thank you, free publicity." The crowd cheered and I placed a smile on my face as I waved at them, making the cheer even louder. I sensed some animosity from Class B, but I could see the support and management departments looking at me with hunger in their eyes. All Might was a nigh godly figure in this world. Comparing anyone to him is bound to draw attention. Something I was planning to take full advantage of today. I walked up the podium steps where Midnight was waiting for me with a mic. I took my place and waited for the crowd to subside. Everyone you see before you today has earned their place in this school through their own hard work. I pledge this today. We will not stop until the work of our predecessors is done. We are the ones that carry forth their will when they themselves are no longer able. I cannot speak for everyone in every hero school, but I will not stop until every man, woman and child on this world can stand at ease and without fear of what lurks in the dark corners of our society. I will give my all to this cause, I will become the pillar of strength that holds up our society. And when that's not enough, I will dig deeper and go beyond, plus ultra. The crowd roared the words of UA along with me. This is my resolution, one that I will carry out with my dying will if needed. This is what is necessary to safeguard peace in this society. What a rousing speech from the only student in Class 1A. Said Mick. Now, it's time for the first event of the day, which is a Game of Thrones. As the word appeared on the giant screen, I couldn't help but wonder if this Game of Thrones involves murder and sex as well. Now, as for the rules. Your job is to retrieve the crown of one of the kings from each of the 4 thrones occupied by one of the teachers. You can do this alone or in teams of 5. Other than that, nothing is forbidden, said Midnight. I nodded and looked over the displayed map of the 4 thrones. On each one there was a teacher. There was Cementos, on a tall, cement mountain cliff with an almost vertical wall and a narrow path to reach the top. Next was Ectoplasm standing in what appeared to be a small labyrinth with a throne at the center. Following this was Midnight, which was standing in a small valley, and lastly was Snipe, who was in the middle of a western town and on a mechanical horse as his throne. Once the horn sounded, I dashed to Cemento's location. With my Sharingan, I could see the stress lines in the rock as I began waving hand seals. Fire style. Plasma bullet, I called out. I spat 3 orbs of yellow-white plasma which zoomed through the air and struck Cemento's tower, causing it to crack and being to shatter as Cementos tried to regain some semblance of control after my devastating attack. And Madara starts off the event with a devastating attack. "Man, this kid sure isn't playing around today," said Present Mick. I could see that while my initial attack was successful, it only destabilized the structure, and with Cementos there, it wouldn't collapse as it should. I could use a fire dragon bullet, but I have no idea what is next in store for me, so I'll refrain from wasting chakra. I jumped on the cliff and began to run up the side of it. That's right folks, your eyes are not deceiving you, he really is walking on walls. After all, he's the current #1 of his year's heroics department in everything from training to academics. Though, I'm not sure who's teaching who in those classes, said Mick. The crowd laughed at his joke. After all, I was reasonably well known as a prodigy genius, so it wasn't that surprising that I didn't have a problem in academics. Technically, I've already graduated high school. I came to the top of the cliff that Cementos was using, and I was instantly faced with a few walls of concrete. I broke through the first few, but I could see this was a losing battle, so I began forming hand seals. Earth style. Earth Destroyer, I called out as I slammed my palms on the ground. The cliff shook as it began to collapse. Cementos was trying to stop it, but it was useless. With a simple flash step, I was behind my teacher and swiftly knocked him out with a gentle fist strike while he was distracted and took his crown. A simple body flicker later, and we were in the middle of the arena while the cliff crumbled behind us. And here we have it, the first to complete the first round of the sports festival, and in such a flashy style, Madara Midoriya. Yelled out Mick. Wait, what's this, is he going after the other crown too? Is that even allowed? Who cares, if he wants to go for more, I say we let him, don't you, asked Mick. The crowd roared in approval as I approached the valley where Midnight was positioned. I couldn't go in there since I had no way of dealing with her quirk, but I had a better idea. I sensed that there was only Midnight in the valley proper and that most teams were trying to circle around the ridge. Well, screw that. Water style. Waterfall, I yelled out. I spat out a gargantuan amount of water alongside that which I had taken from the atmosphere to the point where I had filled the valley. Midnight was left powerless in the face of all this water and was knocked out when the wave hit her location. Thankfully I was on time to save her from drowning because that would have been embarrassing. I take her crown and deposit her with Cementos. Unbelievable, did you see that? This kid's on a roll. Already 2 crowns down and 2 teachers knocked out, and no other team even managed to get close to their objectives, said Mick, and the crowd cheered yet again. I can almost feel the interested stares of the crowd of pro heroes that are watching the sport festival. Next on my list was Ectoplasm. He would be tricky, but his clones are somewhat fragile. Not as fragile as my shadow clones, but not that far off either. I can see the other students from the heroic and general courses giving me the stink eye. I honestly don't very much care. They're weak, very weak. If in the 5 minutes I've been running around taking down not 1, but 2 objectives, they haven't done anything. I began my hand seals and slapped my palm down on the ground. Earth style. Mobile core. I shouted. I pushed a lot more of my chakra in this technique than I normally do because I needed to sink the entire labyrinth. The ground lowered itself with a great tremor until I could see the top of the labyrinth clearly. From there it was a relatively simple mission of jumping across the labyrinth until I reached the crown. Unfortunately, Ectoplasm sent out some of his clones to stop me. Not that it worked. I am on par with some of the best in martial arts, and while Ectoplasm is very good, his clones are inherently weak against damage, especially damage from my take of the gentle fist. Eventually I reached the original and engaged him as a brutal display of martial prowess before shooting his crown off with a water-style pistol and getting the hell out of Doge. I'm not yet good enough to go up against someone as experienced as Ectoplasm in simple hand-to-hand without using gentle fist or strong fist to their full offensive potential, and I don't want to hurt him. There he goes again folks, this is 3 for 3, can he make it 4 for 4? Said Mick. I turned my attention to the shooting gallery that was Snipe's corner of the arena and vanished in a body flicker, only to reappear on the roof of one of the houses directly behind Snipe. I once again sped through hand seals. Higher style. Explosive mist, I called out. I took a deep breath and spewed out an ash cloud that enveloped the square where he was fighting. I moved to take his crown when my danger sense went off, and I used a quick seal-less replacement with a nearby barrel, only for the barrel to be shredded with rubber bullets. Don't get cocky, kid. I can see you even through this ash cloud, called out Snipe. I raised an eyebrow and held half a hand seal. Explode, I say, and the cloud lights up in a reasonable explosion. Holy crap, did you see that? He just blew Snipe right up. Man, am I glad I only have to teach him English, said Mick. A slight push of my chakra and the dust cleared to show a mildly smoking Snipe who was still twitching on the ground. I calmly walked forward and took his crown and placed it on my belt alongside the other crowns. And there you have it folks, the undisputed winner of the first event, Madara Midoriya. Yelled Mick, we will now take a small break to prepare the arena for the next event. I walked out the arena and into the one awaiting room. There I saw Izawa-sensei waiting for me. "So, did I do good?" I asked. He huffed. "I knew that you would pull something like this, you overpowered problem child, but do you think you could let the others take the spotlight for a bit?" "No, not really," I replied with a slight smirk. He sighed. "Why am I not surprised? Honestly, if it were anyone but you, the fact that 3 of the 4 teachers we had participate in this event are knocked out would have had serious repercussions against our school," said Izawa. My face turned grim. "I have not thought about that. Is there a problem? Should I hold back in the next events?" I asked. Izawa shook his head. "The Hero Commission already know that you're a prodigy unlike any since Hawks himself. They don't know about your quirk if that's what you're worried about. Nezu made it quite clear that you only came to UA because you want a hero license and hinted at the fact that you'll rival All Might when you grow up. They won't risk losing such a talent, and it's not like it's not without precedent. All Might withholds information about his quirk too." I nod. Madara called out Izawa. "Huh?" I asked, somewhat surprised that he used my name. "This festival is a way to show your strength to the world. Don't worry about the others, focus only on winning. After all, this year's crop is lacking compared to you, and once you go pro, you'll gather enough popularity that petty school squabbles won't matter. Especially given the speech you gave at the start," said Izawa. "Okay, I'll do my best," I said. But that he left me to prep for the next event. The next event of the sports festival is team battle. Yelled Mick. "In this event, the team with the crowns will face against the other teams without crowns. The teams that end up with one of the 4 crowns at the end of the 20-minute event will go on to the final round." I nodded to myself. For ease of use, the crowns have been replaced with headbands, and because of the stunt I pulled in the last event, I will have to go up against some 80 students from the heroics and general education departments and another 120 from support and management. This will be my ultimate test. On one side we have Madara Midoriya, the genius whose power knows no bounds, and on the other side, the rest of his year in UA. "Who will win and who will lose?" said Mick. Across the nation, people stopped what they were doing and looked at their TV screens, smartphones and tablets. This year's sport festival had attracted a lot more attention than usual. Even the villains were watching with care. In one house, a mother and son pair were watching the TV. For Izuku, this was one of the most exciting days of his life, second only to that one when he met All Might. Finally, after so many years, he would see his brother's full power unleashed. Meanwhile, on the stadium, I was standing on one end of it with the rest of the students waiting for me in the other. I closed my eyes as I began to tune my breathing. All around me I could sense the chakra flowing through every human being and creature in the world. I could sense its mystical connection through all of us. I delved deeper into myself, into that pool of chakra that was normally so calm. All it took was one thought, one nudge, and the chains that held my power bound broke loose. There was a gasp from the audience as chakra exploded from my being, cracking the very ground itself. The entire stadium could feel the level of my power. "Man, what presence, just looking at him gives me the chills," said Mick. I cared not for useless talk. I reined my chakra back, feeding it into my very muscles in a way I have done only in practice. I could sense the growing unease of my opponents and the excitement of the audience. "Start," yelled Mick. My eyes snapped open, showing a glowing blood-red Sharingan to the world. I began walking towards the other group as they let out battle cries and ran towards me. I too took to running. At the middle of the stadium we met in combat. I jumped over the first few lines. I had no wish to confront the brawlers just now. I landed in the middle of a pack of Gen Ed students. 2 well-placed kicks and they were out. I twisted in midair as I vanished in a flash step, only to reappear a moment later next to one big-looking student that was preparing to ambush me. I instantly charged a Rasengan and used it to launch him clear across the stadium. In the next instant I vanished again in a flash step and reappeared in the midst of a group of Gen Ed students that I took out in a brutal display of martial prowess. From the corners of my eye I could see a mass of students approaching, and so I vanished again. I reappeared in the middle of the mass of approaching students. Before they could react, I grabbed 2 of them and flung them out at the group. My makeshift bat managed to clip a few students, but I quickly began to engage them in traditional hand-to-hand combat. Not that any of them had anything that could even phase me. Sharingan plus chakra enhanced speed and reflexes are an absolutely deadly combination that ensured no one could beat me. Punch. Kick. Dodge. Jump. Repeat. This was the dance I wove as I mowed down the ranks of children that were against me. Most couldn't even use their quirks in the chaos that ensued, and some were already running for the exit. Dodging another pitiful attempt at a punch from a 1B student, I saw a couple of students further back preparing to unleash their quirks. My Sharingan sought them out, and they made the mistake of looking into my eyes. "Sharingan. Jinjutsu," I whispered as they froze. I needed space. I already took out a good chunk of the students, now I needed to break them up before they can regroup. Earth style. Seismic quake. I roared over the sounds of battle. The entire stadium shook as a seismic pulse expanded from my location, making all the students in the arena fell to the ground. Time to end this farce of a battle. Earth style. Swamp of the underworld, I called out. The ground liquefied as a good number of students sank into the mud, though a few managed to survive. I cut off the jutsu and jumped back to assess the situation. Most of the students were out of commission, either by way of my taijutsu attacks or by being stuck in the now hardened ground. I need to develop more earth-style jutsu. They are unexpectedly useful when dealing with many opponents. Only 8 remained from what was once 200 students. Amazing, did you see that? He just blew the others right away like they weren't even there, yelled Mick. This sentiment was shared all over the country as they watched one child take down a veritable army of what was supposed to be the elite of the next generation. I watched as the 6 students of Class B and the other 2 from Gen Ed pulled themselves to their feet, obviously shaken from what they witnessed. Do you still wish to dance with me? I asked loudly. Consider this my homage to my namesake. The stadium grew quiet. The 8 boys gritted their teeth, and while I couldn't hear them, I saw the curses they muttered under their breaths. Is this truly what the world can expect from the next generation? Was I wrong? I asked in a mildly condescending tone. I see one snap. Ah, there you go. You bastard, what kind of monster are you? Asked one of the Gen Z students. I am a hero. A pillar of strength against the evil that nests in the darkness. I am what you must strive to beat if you wish to protect all as a hero, should I say in a loud voice that carried all over the stadium. I see them falter. Is this all you have? Do you think you can run away every time you have to face against someone so far above you that you have no hope of defeating? You are now all that stands between your classmates and me whom you so eloquently called a monster, I say strongly, crossing my arms against my chest, peering down at them with the Sharingan. They did not respond. But I saw most of them nervously looking at each other, except for a buff student at the back of the group who was not looking at them. I saw him move and push to the front of the group. I raised an eyebrow. So, will you stand and fight or will you run? I asked at last. I don't care about your power. I won't let you get away with this. I'll get one of those crowns if it's the last thing I do, he yelled and activated his quirk. Crystals began sprouting from his hands and every exposed surface as he hardened his skin, likely in preparation for combat with me. I see, you still wish to dance with me, but you lack the strength to do so, I said. He won't be alone, yelled another boy as he too activated his quirk, making some marbles appear near him. Soon after, all 8 had their quirks powered and aimed at me, even if only 3 of them had the necessary long-range combat capability. Understandable since my previous actions was meant to dispose of those exact same people. With a battle cry, they launched themselves at me, the long-range quirk users, firing away. I dodged, their projectiles were too slow. In a flash step I closed the distance. I punched the crystal user in the gut, breaking his armor and making him vomit. With a leap I pressed another into the ground, while I kicked out with my legs, hitting the 2 that rushed to aid him in the face and dazing them. Following this I parried what seemed to be bone blades from another, while I restrained him and then used him as a bat to take out the other 3 that were approaching. With another flash step, I was at a far enough distance from them to allow them to regroup. The stadium was quiet. Many not being able to believe their eyes about what happened today. I saw the kids stand up leaning on one another for support. Do you still wish to fight? I asked. They did not reply. And when they were close enough, the crystal guy broke into a sloppy run as he cocked his fist back. Plus ultra, he yelled. He tried to punch me in the face, but I caught his punch with one hand, centimeters from hitting my face. I think it's time you slept, Sharingan. Jinjutsu, I spoke. My eyes contacted his and he crumbled to the ground, asleep. I looked at his other comrades. Do you wish to continue? I asked. They shook their heads and sank to the ground. The winner of the second round is Madara Midoriya, yelled Present Mick. The crowd went wild as they rose to their feet, kicking and screaming at my victory. Madara, 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 they chanted. I raised my fist in victory and they roared back in response, even the heroes were fired up from what they witnessed. Honestly, I felt like some kind of gladiator that managed to slay the lion that was supposed to eat him. Still, it doesn't matter. Because there was almost no one left in a good enough condition to fight, and the ones that were didn't even want to be in the same room as me, it was decided to forego the third round, and I was given the medal for first place, with the crystal guy coming in second. I had some preparations to make for when I will be assaulted tonight by my brother and mother with questions. Itsuki had always known that Madara was one of the most powerful people he would ever meet. It wasn't conscious knowledge, it was a form of intuition he's always had. The same intuition that made him yell at Deku because Katsuki knew that if he didn't do something that Deku will surpass him. It was already difficult enough to bear his habit of looking down on him, always asking if he needed help and always helping the other extras like Hero. Deku wasn't a hero, he was quirkless. He would have put Deku in his place physically, but he knew that Madara would kill him if he did that, one way or another. The guy wasn't a villain, but he wasn't a hero either. Heck, he's probably going through the hero course only to get a hero license to use his quirk. Speaking of quirks, what the hell was his? Katsuki knew that there were strength enhancers, speed enhancers, elemental quirks, but the amount of power Madara showed was fucking unbelievable. He was able to manipulate earth, water and some strange combination of fire and explosion, and that was on top of being able to stick to a vertical surface and enhanced physical prowess. What the fuck? That was like 5 quirks worth of power at the very least. And that's not even considering the slaughter of the rest of his year. 1 student against 200 ended with the last 7 students still conscious and able to move surrendering, while Madara looked like he didn't even sweat after the event. Katsuki respected him for this. He had always had a great deal of respect for Madara's strength, but looking at him now, Katsuki couldn't help but compare himself to him and found himself lacking. That made him angry. There were less than 10 months until the entrance exam, and he would be damned if he didn't try his best to close the gap with Madara. In all his years as a hero All Might, or as we were now known in his emaciated state, Yagi Toshinori couldn't have predicted that a child could have such power. He had of course watched the sport festival for first years to see how young Madara was doing. He was of course expecting him to do great, after all, in their little spar All Might recognized that it was the first time since his fight with All For One that he had faced such a versatile power. All Might was not expecting what happened to happen. Never in the history of UA had the sport festival been cut short because all the students had been defeated. It was unthinkable for a student to even do such a thing. Madara did it. Madara, with a self-discovered power that he still didn't fully understand, took on 200 students and won. And on national TV no less. All Might was seriously beginning to rethink his initial opinion of chakra. He had always thought that somehow One For All could surpass it. And while it was true that young Madara did have combat training and had rigorously trained since he was very young, but to reach this level. And so soon. The kid wasn't even 15 yet, and he was already shaping up to be the kind powerhouse that wouldn't be out of place in the same power bracket as All Might himself. Chakra had already proven itself versatile enough that even with full knowledge of what it can do, All Might was going at more than 80% of his current power, and he only won because young Madara surrendered because he was suffering from what he called chakra exhaustion, which was similar to quirk exhaustion, after flinging almost his entire arsenal of jutsu at All Might. No, that spar shouldn't be used as a benchmark. It was only a way for young Madara to have a chance to use his full destructive abilities against someone who could take it, and even then, All Might knew he held back lest he somehow kill him. Something that was looking like it was not out of the realm of possibility anymore. Back on topic, though. What was less concerning was young Madara's speech at the beginning of the tournament. The pillar of strength, huh? Asked All Might seemingly to himself. Damn it, the kid was reminding him too much of how he was back in his youth before he got One For All. Well, maybe not his casual disregard for life, but his stated wish to stand against evil. All Might. We're here, yelled out young Izuku with a grin on his face as he jogged towards him. Next to him his brother was walking along with a content and amused smile on his face as he watched his brother take off running. All Might would be lying if he said that the kids hadn't grown on him in this last month. Young Izuku, young Madara, thank you for coming, said All Might. It's no problem, All Might. So why did you call us? Asked young Madara, though by the knowing glint in his eyes, All Might suspected he knew why he called them here. I wanted to talk about the sport festival, said All Might. What about it, All Might? Asked Izuku. Is it true, what you said in the beginning, young Madara? About being a pillar of strength? Asked All Might. Izuku turned to look at his brother. Madara had closed his eyes and was leaning a bit backwards. It's true, said Madara. So, you wish to be the one to replace me? Asked All Might. It was a valid question. After all, he had young Izuku as a successor of One For All. It was still unclear if the boy could take his place as the symbol of peace. If he even wanted it. What do you mean, All Might? How will he replace you? Asked Izuku, looking hurt. Before All Might could answer, Madara spoke. It's not like that, little brother. He's asking if I want to replace him as the symbol of peace, said Madara. Something akin to relief washed across young Izuku's face, and All Might felt awful. Did he really think he was offering his brother One For All because of a simple speech after he had already selected him to be the 9th bearer of the quirk? Oh, I see, said Izuku. Madara sighed and closed his eyes again, falling silent. So, will you? Asked All Might. No, replied Madara simply. This answer stunned both Izuku and All Might. I'm sorry All Might, but I can't be the symbol of peace. There is too much darkness in my heart for that, said Madara. All Might was bewildered. Sure, young Madara was a bit antisocial, but then again so was he. He had very few close friends, and the rest was just a mask he put on to entertain the media and assure the people that everything was alright. This being said, in all the time All Might had spent with him, Madara had never struck him as an evil person. He might be more morally questionable than him, but then again Endeavor was number 2 in the hero rankings, and there were rumors. Oh, come on, you can't really believe in that curse of hatred crap, right? Said Izuku, though it sounded more like a pleaded question. What is this curse of hatred? Asked All Might. Young Madara looked at him with those blood-red eyes that never failed to make All Might shiver. The curse of hatred is the price of the Sharinin's power. These eyes of mine see all and record all. Nothing is ever truly hidden from the men in the process, it takes away one's ability to deny the darkness in society and the darkness in one's own soul. Also, I don't really know this, but I have a feeling that the greater the darkness within me grows, the greater the Sharinin's powers become, said young Madara. That was truly something terrifying. If young Madara ever slipped or his sanity was compromised, All Might was not sure that the hero society could survive his fall to villainy. Then what did you mean when you said that you wanted to be the pillar of strength? Asked All Might. I want to be someone who can stand against the darkness. Someone who society could rely on in their darkest moments until a new light emerges, and when that light finally shines bright, I want to be the pillar that helps support society, said Madara. He then turned his head and gave his brother a smile and ruffled his hair, making the other boy whine. I already have my light right here. If I've got Izuku, I don't fear the darkness within me, nor the Sharinin's curse of hatred, said Madara. Nai-san, said young Izuku, who was blushing but had tears in his eyes. I won't be the symbol of peace because my brother is the one that will inherit that title. Instead, I will be the pillar of strength that will help the world transition between eras, said Madara, and once that is done I will remain as a failsafe, just in case a new threat emerges and someone is needed to eliminate it. All Might stared at the boy and couldn't help but marvel at his convictions. All Might knew what he had to do. Young Madara, will you accept an internship with me at my agency? Asked All Might. Young Izuku stopped crying as they both turned to him with equally confused faces. Normally after the sport festival, the students receive internship offers from different hero agencies, and you are right. It really is the end of my era as symbol of peace, said All Might. Don't say that, All Might. Began Izuku. No, young Izuku, this must be said, and you as my successor to my quirk and title must know. My body is already failing me, as you both know, and soon enough it won't even be able to support my quirk. After I pass it to you, young Izuku, all that I will have left are some members of One for All, and when those are gone, I will remain quirkless, said All Might. It will be the death of All Might, said young Madara. What? All Might's going to die? Said Izuku, looking worried, but he was calmed by his brother. No, it will be the death of All Might, the symbol of peace, not Yagi Toshinori, and it will throw society in chaos, said Madara. Unfortunately, you are correct, young Madara. That is why I wish to formally take you under my wing and help you become the pillar of strength so that you will be able to keep the torch alive until the next symbol of peace is able to take it back up again, said All Might. The boys stayed silent as they absorbed this new information. After a few minutes of silence, All Might broke it. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Go home and think it over. Don't forget, young Izuku, to be on time tomorrow, said All Might. Okay, I will. Said Izuku as he dragged his brother off the beach. Hey, Nai-san. Asked Izuku. I turned my head to look at my little brother. Did you really mean what you said about me being the symbol of peace? Asked Izuku in a small voice, looking at the ground, not even trying to meet my eyes. Of course, Izuku. I meant every single word. You were always there to pull me back from the edge, and I know that you always will be, whether I want you to or not, I said. Izuku was crying again. I hugged him and he hugged me in return. I believe in you, Izuku. Never forget that I will never leave your side, after all, I'm your brother, and that's what brothers do, I said softly. Izuku just cried harder. My dear brother is a crybaby, but I wouldn't trade him for the world. Now I just have to figure out how to move on from here, now that the very thing I wanted has fallen, quite literally, into my lap. Chapter. Aftermath of the sport festival. I must admit, I wasn't expecting this. I mean, yes, I was expecting headlines in newspapers and the occasional reporter trying to accost me on my way to school, but I wasn't expecting to see the literal horde of people standing in front of my apartment block. Shit, I said. Nai-san, what's happening? Asked Izuku as he came out of his room in his workout clothes. We usually woke up together 2 hours before school started to go for a jog in the morning. It looks like that won't be happening today. Wow, what's with all these reporters here? asked Izuku as he pulled back the curtain a bit to get a better look outside. No, don't. I said as I yanked him back by his shirt. He yelped and crashed into me, but thankfully I was ready and we didn't fall. Those are reporters, also known as land sharks. Stay here and get breakfast going. I must make a few phone calls, I said. Okay, so what do you want? Asked Izuku. Just the usual. And try not to burn the kitchen down this time, I said. Izuku blushed at that. I may love him to bits, but he's still useless in the kitchen and has an unusual propensity for turning his food into science experiments, and not the good kind, but the kind that will probably make even rats vomit. I first called my mom. Hi, darling, what do you need? Did something happen? Asked Inko. Yeah, it seems that my stunt yesterday got me more attention than usual. Can you not come home today? You'll probably get mobbed by reporters, I said. Oh, dear, is it that bad? She asked. Yeah, I'm calling Izawa-sensei now. Hopefully I can get him to take me and Izuku to school or something, I said. Okay, honey. I'll talk to Mitsuki. Stay safe. Said Inko. We will. Bye, Mom, I said. I immediately called up Izawa afterwards. He picked up after a few rings. What do you want? Asked Izawa. I cringed a bit. From the sound of his voice I could tell that he was wishing me to be gone so he could go back to sleep. Sorry to bother you, sensei, but I have the paparazzi on my front doorstep and I don't think that confronting them would be a good idea, I said. I heard some shuffling before I heard his voice again. Run that by me again. You have what on your doorstep? Asked Izawa, sounding more awake. The media, I replied. He groaned. Shit. How bad is it, kid? Asked Izawa. Bad. I can't see a normal exit route and there are some media vans parked in the street that belong to some major news agencies and talk shows, I said. Can't you ninja your way around them? Asked Izawa. I can, Izuku can't, I said. There was silence from the other end of the line. Okay. Stay put, I'll come to get you, said Izawa. Okay, thanks Teach, I said and ended the call. I came back to the kitchen to find my brother on his phone. I looked over his shoulders to see a news site and the front page. It was a picture of me from the sport festival in a battle stance and grinning while looking over at someone off camera with narrowed Sharingan eyes while behind me was a pile of unconscious students. The photo was taken slightly from the side. Next to it was a picture of All Might in an almost exact stance with a pile of villains at his back and looking off screen at another villain with his trademark smile on his face. Honestly, the similarities between the two pictures were eerie. What was worse was the title, The Next All Might. In a way, this was exactly what I wanted to happen, but somehow, I felt oddly uncomfortable calling myself All Might's heir. Izuku, I began, but was cut off. Don't worry, Nai-san. I know that this is just a face for the media, said Izuku with a smile. I sighed and hugged him all the while messing up his hair, making him whine. What did I do to get such an understanding little brother? In a way I still feel like I'm robbing you of your rightful place, I said. Don't say that, Nai-san. I always knew that I would be compared to you if we went into heroics. I must make my own path. I don't care if they compare us, in fact I'll be proud to measure up to you, said Izuku. Izuku, no one should be comparing you to me. You are your own person with your own ideals, strength and will. You don't need to measure up to me, because I'm not the goal you should set for yourself, I said. What do you mean, Nai-san? Asked Izuku, confused. I sighed and moved to sit down at my own chair looking over the breakfast laid before me. You, Izuku, are one of a kind. You have such strong convictions and morals, while I am all too willing to bend mine to get what I want, I said. That's not true, Nai-san, said Izuku. Yes, it is. Have you ever wondered why it is that Katsuki doesn't physically bully you? I asked. Izuku was silent. He knew his maybe friend's attitude against the weak and when he was younger, he was weak. But Katsuki only beat him up once. Remember the time he was sick for a month? I asked. Not really. Why? Asked Izuku. After he beat you up, I cornered him after school and did enough damage to him to put him in the hospital for a month, I said bluntly. Izuku blinked and was surprised. He knew that I had beaten a bully bad enough to send him to the hospital. It was after that fight that he told me to stop. I didn't know, said Izuku. And I threatened him that I would do worse if he ever touched you again, I confessed. Izuku looked down at his phone and the picture on it and said a soft "Oh." That's what I mean, Izuku. I can't be All Might's true heir. It would be a perversion of everything he stands for, I said. Don't worry about it, Nai-san, said Izuku. I looked at him, not understanding what he was going on about. I know what you mean, but I trust you to know when too far is too far. And besides, All Might needs a successor fast and I can't give him that. But maybe I could be yours, said Izuku with a shy smile. I looked at him and smiled. Okay. We ate our breakfast while chatting about what the media was saying about me. So far, their opinions were divided. Some said that I was the next great hero, like All Might, and some said that I was too violent. Still, the overall feedback from the people was that of happiness to have another symbol. Still, there were conspiracy websites that said that All Might was retiring and I was his son or some other relation. It made me worried for Izuku's safety. Izuku, do you think you could take an early exam and test out of middle school? I asked. Sure, I already know all they teach there. Why do you need me to? Asked Izuku confused. We were in the living room and I watched while he did strength exercises for his arms. I have to say that Izuku bulked up quite a bit in these past 2 months since meeting All Might, but then again, he had the base I helped him build for a whole year before they met. I don't think it's safe for you right now. If the media found our house, I'm willing to bet that they found your school, and the villains won't be far behind, I said. But what about Mom? Asked Izuku. She won't be that much of a target except for reporters, and I think Aunt Mitsuki wouldn't mind having Mom over for a few days until the media forgets about our home, which I bet will happen as soon as I announce my internship with All Might, I said. Okay, I get it, but why am I in danger? I'm quirkless, said Izuku. True, but you're my twin, and studies have shown that there is a tiny chance that you might develop a quirk later on in life. After all, the toe joint test isn't as foolproof as we'd want it to be, and you never had your genome tested. The possibility is there that the doctor could have simply misread your X-ray. Okay, but I still don't get why you're so worried, said Izuku. You're my brother, Izuku, and you technically have a quirk named hyperpower. You have also shown a desire and will to get into heroics. To the villains that matter, the smart ones, know that I'm out of their reach. You on the other hand aren't Izuku, and I bet that they don't want another powerhouse to rival me and All Might out there. They may think that it's best to get rid of you now while you're still vulnerable. Sometime later we will have to give a public statement of how you activated your powerful quirk after the sludge incident if we want to keep the secret of One for All safe, I said. I understand, Nai-san, said Izuku. I'll speak with All Might today and come pick you up from school. I don't think anyone will make a move on you today, I said. Okay, said Izuku. He looked at the clock and went to get dressed. After we dressed for school, I got a text from Izawa to be on the lookout for his car. A few minutes later, his car along with a couple of police cars arrived and the police made a corridor to the entrance. I walked out, head held high as I was assaulted with flashes. I smiled and waved. Looking back, I saw my brother frozen with a deer in the headlights expression on his face. I put an arm around his shoulders and guided him to the car, all the while Izuku was doing his best to hide himself in his uniform's collar. We met Aizawa-sensei at his car as the man was leaning on it. Hi, Aizawa-sensei, sorry for the trouble, I said. Problem child, get in. Who's the clone? Asked Aizawa in a bored tone. I knew he knew, but was asking for politeness sake. This is my brother, Izuku. Izuku, this is Eraserhead Aka Aizawa Shoda, I said. Hi, Mr. Eraserhead, sir, said Izuku shyly. Enough talk, get in, said Aizawa curtly. Man, is he still grumpy about being waken up. We got in and Aizawa got in the driver's seat and drove off in the direction of Izuku's school. After a while of silence, Izuku began asking questions about Aizawa's work as Eraserhead with that fanboy expression on his face. I could see him begging me in the rearview mirror to make Izuku shut up. I decided to take pity on him and snaked a hand behind Izuku's head and covered his mouth, making his speech muffled. Now, little brother, I think that Aizawa-sensei had enough questions, don't you? I asked. Izuku looked at me and then at Aizawa's relieved expression and blushed something fierce. And on that note, we've arrived, shit, said Aizawa. I looked out the window and saw a smaller horde of reporters at the entrance of Izuku's school, along with a good deal of the students of the school. Nai-san, what's going to happen? Asked Izuku looking somewhat worried. I'm not sending you out to deal with that mess. Aizawa-sensei, can Izuku come with me to UA until this mess gets sorted out? I asked, though it came out more like a demand. I suppose. I'll call the principal to let him know, said Aizawa with a tired sigh. And just like that we were off again. Honestly, I expected a greater deal of resistance from Aizawa, but I think that even he had enough of a heart as to not send middle school children to face the media. I turned to Izuku and saw him with the biggest grin I've ever seen on his face and his fist stuffed inside his mouth to keep himself from screaming. I honestly haven't seen him this excited since I told him about chakra. Sometime later we arrived at UA and were let inside. Izuku got a visitator card and I took him to class 1 and let him in. A few moments later Aizawa followed carrying the mother of all paper stacks. Sensei, you need any help with that? I asked. Normally it was Izuku who was jumping in to help people, but I think I broke him today. I looked behind me and, yep, totally broken and drooling. Must fix that before it becomes gross. No need, said Aizawa as he plopped them on my desk. So, what are those? I asked warily, like it was about to attack me. These are your internship offers. We usually don't have this many internship offers for first years, but you're a special case, as always, he said. I kinda figured, but why are there so many? I asked. Honestly, I was not expecting this. Aizawa looked at me like I was stupid, which I admit hurt a bit. There is an internship offer from almost every hero with a teaching license in Japan, including All Might, said Aizawa. I took a small glace behind me. Izuku was still in La La Land and non-responsive, so his reaction won't give anything away. I'll take All Might's offer, I said with a grin. Aizawa huffed. I figured. Now this part is usually done by midnight, but considering that you already know your way around public relations, at least somewhat, I'll say this. It's time to choose your hero name. I blinked. I was seriously not expecting this to happen so soon. I mean, what would I choose as my hero name anyways? My own name is somewhat of a ripoff from a supposedly fictional character in my old life, and I always thought that monikers and hero names had to be earned. Still, he had a point. I couldn't parade around the streets without a hero name, especially if I was going to be interning with All Might of all people. Still, my name had to be something of great significance to tie into the image of the pillar of strength. Rikido, I said in a whisper. Nai-san? Asked Izuku. I looked back at him and saw him looking at me strangely. In all these years he had gone through hundreds of hero names, almost all some variation of All Might's. I never spoke about what mine will be. The new titan. Rikido. The hero that holds the word from falling, I said, determined as I looked into Aizawa's eyes. He kept my gaze for a few moments and smiled and nodded. Some time later, I found myself in the support department. I wanted to get a weapon that could act like a shield if needed and be strong enough to channel my chakra, though in the end I chose to recreate the war fan that Obito and Madara used in the 4th Ninja War, simply because of practical reasons. Okay, I admit that some fanboying did happen when I designed it, and I may or may not have also designed an exact copy of Madara's red armor from Naruto, but I didn't send the specs for it to the support department. I like my own armor and I feel that it's something unique to me. I'm not changing that. Maybe tweak it a little. Afterwards I went to the principal's office to discuss my brother's situation. Thankfully Nezu was there with All Might in his skeleton form. When did you get here, All Might? I blurted out. The man gave me a slight smile. I live in this town now. It's the easiest way for me to train young Izuku, said All Might. I looked at the principal, who was calmly sipping his tea. I take it you know about One for All, Mr. Principal, I said. Please, call me Nezu, and yes, I do know about All Might's power. It's such a fascinating quirk, don't you say, said Nezu. Indeed. I wanted to discuss something with you and All Might about the security of my family, I said bluntly. This caused All Might to straighten his pose and Nezu to set down his cup and look at me intensely. Did something happen, young Madara? Are you in danger? Asked All Might. I shook my head. It's not me I'm worried about, but my brother and mother that I've inadvertently placed in the firing line of the villains, I said. Has a threat been issued to you? Asked Nezu. I shook my head. It's something else. I'm already well known in the scientific community as a genius child, and that made me a target for villains to kidnap, but I was always careful about just how much information I dispensed, and I trusted the universities to keep my personal data secure. However, I still woke up to find a horde of reporters in front of my house and Izuku's school, and if reporters can find where I live, then I have no doubt that villains would too, I said. I can arrange for a police protection detail for them, said All Might. You can do that? I asked, surprised. I have a good friend in the police force, said All Might. It won't work that way, said Izuku. Where did he come from? I looked back and I saw him with his hand on his chin and eyebrows scrunched up in his usual thinking pose. Good, he's learning. I'm just thankful that he's not completely ignorant to the darker aspects of being a hero and how it affects those around them. Especially if one aims for the top. Oh, please go on, Midoriya, said Nezu, looking anxious to see what he did next. Well, I'm planning to go into heroics, and everyone who knows me even just a bit knows this. Also, Nai-san said that villains may want to target me and take me out now before I get All Might's quirk, so that I'm not that big of a threat later down the line. Also, they might use me and Mom to get to Nai-san, said Izuku. All Might looked stunned. I never considered that, but why do you think that they will consider you a threat? Asked All Might. I pulled out my phone and opened the page with the headline I saw this morning. Why do you think? I asked. All Might's eyes widened and he coughed some blood as he looked between me and the picture. Weren't expecting that, were you? I asked. No, this is too fast, even I didn't get this popular until well after I became a pro hero, said All Might. It's not that surprising, All Might, said Izuku, with what Nai-san said at the sports festival and his unprecedented feat of whining the entire sports festival by himself, one event early added to your precedent, many think that he's working to become the next you. I nodded. If you still want me as an intern, all the theories that are floating around nowadays about you taking me under your wing to train me us as a successor will be all but confirmed, I said. It's a perfect cover for you to retire from active duty, All Might, and a perfect screen for young Midoriya, said Nezu. What about you, young Izuku, what do you have to say about this? Asked All Might. Izuku fidgeted a bit. Well, I may be your successor to One for All, but I can't be your successor to the title of the Symbol of Peace yet. I'm not even ready to receive your quirk, All Might, and even if I do, I still have almost another year before I enter UA. Also, I don't think I can do what Nai-san plans on doing and graduate in a single year, so I have at least another 4 years before I become a pro hero, and who knows how much time I will need to climb the ranks to number 1. By that time, you would already be retired, All Might, and I can't see the world keeping itself stable without a symbol to protect it, said Izuku, looking at me as he said the last part. So, you want me to build up young Madara to be my successor in the public eye? Asked All Might. Izuku nodded. We talked about it a bit more this morning and both me and Nai-san think it's the best way to go about it. I wouldn't mind not being your successor, All Might. I'm happy being Nai-san's, said Izuku with a slight smile. And I'll be glad for it, I said. Oh, do tell, said Nezu. I looked at the hybrid. Well, originally being a hero was supposed to be a side job for me. A way to get a hero license and be able to help Izuku while I focus on my science and further insight into chakra. It wouldn't have hurt to have the prestige that comes with being a hero or the money one can get from beating up villains, I said. What do you mean, Nai-san, asked Izuku, looking confused. Well, I originally planned to be an underground hero for the first part of my career, I said. All Might choked on his own blood in surprise. I smiled a bit. Yeah, I know. Surprising, isn't it? I intended this plan to come about if I couldn't teach Izuku chakra, I said. What plan was that? Asked Nezu. Well, I planned to enroll early, obviously, but I wouldn't have told you about chakra and restricted myself to only Taijutsu and earth manipulation, along with fire manipulation, claiming it to be a dual elemental quirk. I probably would have toned it down a bit for the sports festival and kept a reasonable high rank for all 3 years. After the first year it all depends on Izuku. If I managed to teach him chakra well enough to enter UA hero course, I would have probably told you about chakra, but if not, then I intended to help him get into either support or general courses and make his way into the hero course through the sports festival, I said. You can do that? Asked Izuku, surprised. Of course, that's how Eraserhead became a hero. And it's the reason why I had you take that course on engineering, I said. You can build support items, young Izuku? Asked All Might, surprised. Izuku blushed. Well, I won't say that they're support items, but yeah, I can invent stuff. Though from where Nai-san gets the parts I never found out, said Izuku. They looked at me. I'm getting to that. Anyways, after I graduated, I planned to open my own hero agency. I've been using underground brokers since I was 12 to build up a small side business to fund my monetary needs, and that money would have gone into the agency and as a starter fund for my fully legitimate business side once I graduated, and not the murky gray area that I'm in now, I said. All Might and Izuku looked at me bewildered, while Nezu had a slight grin on his face and his eyes were twinkling something unholy. After Izuku graduated, I planned to leave most of the agency stuff to him, and depending on whether or not he had chakra, I'd figured we'd either decide to either stay underground or go mainstream. Either way, I would have retired after 5 years and gone off to continue my research, I said. There was silence. Madara, how would you like to work as an intern for my agency? Asked Nezu. I blinked. Sorry, but I need the public exposure that comes from being All Might's intern, I said. Well, there's always the work-study program, said Nezu. I raised an eyebrow. Why is he trying to get me to work for him so hard? We'll see. Anyways, I wanted to ask if there's any way to provide security for Izuku that would withstand villain attacks, I said. There is, but there is the matter of his school, said All Might. Don't worry, All Might. I'm taking a test to graduate early, said Izuku. All Might blinked. That's actually a very good idea. I'll come back to you with an updated schedule. If we keep it low-key, I think I should be able to act as your bodyguard until the year starts, said All Might. Really? Said Izuku. I could see the stars in his eyes. I rolled my eyes. Now, boy. We still need to discuss my internship details, I said. That can wait until tomorrow. For now, do you have anywhere where to stay for the night? Asked Nezu. I have a few safe houses, I said. They all looked at me weirdly. What? I asked. Most 14-year-olds don't have safe houses, said All Might. Most 14-year-olds aren't me, I said back. He nodded, as if conceding the point. Regardless, I have more than enough space in my apartment for the two of you. We could go later to buy you some clothes, said All Might. I don't think we need to. All we need to do is show our faces on the other side of town in full hero gear and pose for a few pictures while announcing my internship. That'll have every reporter in a 10 kilometers radius on us faster than a hungry shark, I said. All Might shuddered and looked at me in what seemed to be awe and pity before he bowed. You truly are courageous, young Madara. To purposely draw the hordes to you is a most noble sacrifice, said All Might. In the background I could hear Izuku laughing. Brad. We didn't end up playing bait for the reporters, since the police thankfully removed the media from the street because they were blocking traffic, so we managed to return home without much trouble. Still, I had Izuku pack up and I prepared a change of clothes for mom as well. Apparently Mitsuki was delighted to have her friend live with her. It took a bit of tears to make mom let Izuku go, at least until this entire mess with relocating our home is sorted out, but I had the secret weapon called All Might. At night Izuku, me and All Might went to the Bakugo household to meet with mom. Thankfully, Katsuki was out training so I didn't have to deal with that situation. I then explained the whole situation to mom, sort of. I told her that All Might's time as the symbol of peace was up and that he needed to retire soon. All Might even showed her his injury and I doubled down of the fact that the world needs a symbol and that I was the only one who could do it. A bit pretentious, but she only knew that Izuku's quirk hurts him since we told her he developed it during the sludge incident and that he was currently training with All Might in his spare time in order to harness it. In a way, it was true. I was the only one strong enough to compete with All Might and that made me the only one capable of taking on the likes of All for One, and Izuku was chosen by All Might to be the next bearer of One for All. No matter what All Might says, I don't believe that All for One's dead. They never did recover the body, and a man that lived for over 100 years must have some sort of contingency plan, otherwise he wouldn't have survived this long. In the end, I gained my independence and was emancipated as a child, a necessity for implementing my contingency plans and establishing a sufficient financial reserve. Izuku went with me, and All Might while mom remained with Mitsuki and a police detachment would watch over them. After that it was relatively easy to pull Izuku out of school, since he had to go into one of the Hero Association's protection service programs. Those were ways for the family members of high-ranking heroes to be hidden and protected from villains, something that was very much needed in the days when All for One still reigned over the underworld and was out and about prowling for powerful quirks to steal. Normally this wouldn't have been done for a UA student, but since All Might himself decided to take me up on my plan to succeed him, it was deemed a necessity. That's another thing I'm not so sure about. It seemed to me that All Might was all too willing to help me ascend to the title of Pillar of Strength. I honestly thought that he would be more reluctant, but instead All Might himself offered me this opportunity. Though this only means that the situation is even more serious than I originally thought. All Might needs to retire soon, and I need to build up my reputation so that whatever transition of power there is between us is done as smoothly as possible to prevent mass panic. It's been 2 days since that day and I'm finishing putting on my suit and mentally preparing myself for the first hero patrol of my life. I never imagined that it would happen like this. Whenever I imagined myself as a hero I would always have in mind the image of Batman. Now I must take up the image of Superman. I just realized that All Might could be called discount Japanese Superman. That's sad. I'll stop now. I had to do a few adjustments to my hero suit. My original design had a bit too much black and dark colors. If I add to that the planned hood and mask, it would be a bit too scary to the usual citizen. I added a few pieces of white cloth to make me look less like an overly dark Batman and more like a normal hero. Young Madara, are you ready? Asked All Might. I nodded. Well then, let's go, he said. All Might buffed up and shot up in the air. I followed him by jumping from rooftop to rooftop with the aid of chakra. I really need to find a way to fly with chakra. It was early morning in Minato, the place where All Might had his agency, Might Tower. For the duration of this week I roped Aizawa-sensei into teaching Izuku hand-to-hand combat. Aizawa did put up some resistance at first, but I managed to convince him of the necessity of my request. I did teach Izuku some things, but I didn't push it that much. I thought that I had the time to take it easy and teach Izuku properly. I no longer have that luxury. Because of my actions and statements, I have placed my family in the path of villains, and while it's relatively easy for my mom to go into hiding and vanish, Izuku is a heck of a lot more stubborn. He would have stood out one way or another with that hero complex of his, and just like I didn't tell him that he couldn't be a hero before he got his chance with All Might, I most certainly couldn't do so now. It would be the height of hypocrisy to prevent Izuku from following his dream just because it's too dangerous. That's the sort of thinking that mom would have. I knew from the beginning that I might one day come home to a dead brother if he went into heroics. But I couldn't fault him for that, especially since his death would have at least served some meager purpose. He would have died doing what he loved and not in a meaningless way. Not like I did. Young Madara. Are you paying attention? Asked All Might. I snapped out of my thoughts and nodded. We were on the roof of a building and down below a few thugs were holding a bank hostage. The media and the police were already there. Yeah, I sent 6 hostiles and 10 hostages. 3 are in the front and 2 are in the back, presumably loading up on money. The last one is on the last floor. All the hostages are aligned in front of the windows, I said. My Sharingan was already on and busy dissecting the target environment. So, how do you wish to get on with your debut? Asked All Might, not taking his eyes off the situation for a moment. I'll go fist and use Earth style. Underground walk to infiltrate the back of the bank and take out those 2 and the one on top. Wait a few minutes and drop down, I said. All Might nodded. Earth style. Underground walk was a jutsu I developed as an infiltration technique. It allows me to pass through earth and concrete with relative ease and is especially useful for ambushes. Sadly, it's useless against high-grade steel or other metals. My body flickered to the roof of the bank. If these robbers were smart, then they would have taken over the security system and CCTV network. They didn't seem smart, but it's best to not underestimate them. I flashed through hand signs and fell through the rooftop like it was liquid. Using chakra, I stuck myself inside the ceiling and crawled over to the secondary power generator. The robbers were smart enough to post a guard next to it. Thankfully, the white fabric I had to add to my suit to cover up the armor beneath it came with a neat color shifting function. It wasn't anything fancy since it just shifted the color from white to black. Still, it was more than enough for me. I landed silently behind the guard. Hey, I said in my most raspy voice. He turned around surprised, but he made a mistake as my blood-red Sharingan eyes locked onto his and the tomo begun to spin. The guy went slack and dropped his gun. Suddenly his radio crackled. Hey, what's going on up there? Asked a voice over the radio. Well, time to test this out. Sharingan. Hypnosis. The guy brought the radio to his mouth with vacant eyes. Nothing, boss, just drop something, said the guy. Apparently, that was enough for his boss and I saw no reason to keep him awake. Sharingan. Jinjutsu. Sleep. I caught the crumpling body and set him down gently on the floor. I tied him up and removed his weapons. A shame that I won't be able to disable the generator without giving away my position. Stealth is paramount in my situation. Still, there is something I can do. I reached into one of my pouches and removed a small imp device I've built, or more specifically I designed. I had Power Loader build it, since only he had the necessary authorization to build support equipment, something that I hope to get for myself. I could remote trigger the imp, and I don't have to worry about damaging anything other than the generator and maybe the camera in the hallway. My equipment was imp-proofed anyways. Running through hand seals again, I disappeared in the floor. Thankfully this time it was thick enough for me to move through it relatively easily. I quickly arrived in the vault at the back of the bank and exited the roof. I could see the 2 crooks in there stuffing duffel bags with money. They were far enough apart that I couldn't take them down simultaneously. I dropped down near one of them and waited for a moment before triggering the imp, making the light in the room flicker and die. What's going on? Asked one of the guys. I quickly ducked out of cover and snatched him by the throat while muffling his voice. He still managed to let out a muffled yelp of surprise, but a quick look tightening of my arms around his throat and he was out like a light. This is surprisingly easy. Hey, man, are you okay? Asked the other on. He was shaking a bit. I let my clothes rustle as I ran around to get behind his back. He tried to train his gun on me, but he wasn't effective in doing it. I can see why Batman liked doing this. This is surprisingly fun. Now's not the time. Focus. Is anyone there? He asked. Come out and I won't shoot you. He activated his quirk, making his hand glow with what appeared to be fire. I'm here, I rasped. The guy jumped up and crashed into a table trying to turn around and shoot me. He didn't manage to do that since he had the unfortunate luck of looking into my eyes, allowing me to cast Jinjutsu on him. I really need to up my Jinjutsu training. I never really understood just how limiting using only visual Jinjutsu really is, especially for taking down large numbers of people. I tied the 2 thugs up and went to the door only to find it locked. Lovely. Suddenly there was a tremor outside and a booming voice proclaimed. Have no fear. Because I am here. All Might. We're saved. Other such exclamations rose from the hostages. Damn it, All Might. I really didn't want to bulldoze though the situation. Charging chakra through my leg, I kicked out the steel door, sending it flying and smacking into the 3 thugs that had clustered in front of the entrance with enough force to send them flying though one of the windows and into the street. I quickly body flickered on the window sill and locked down on them with my arms crossed and Sharingan blazing while manipulating chakra, just enough to give the edges of the white over armor robe covering my legs a slight sway in the non-existent wind. What? This is my debut, I had to look cool doing it. The entire street was looking at me, or I should say that they were also looking at me. All Might still took the spotlight. "Who the heck are you?" asked one of the thugs. "You can call me Rikido and I'm the guy that captured your 3 friends," I said. This surprised them. I saw that only one of them looked human. The other ones were a wolf-human hybrid and a pink bowl of something. Honestly, I can't even say he looked human anymore. He was bipedal. But that's about all I could say as far as him looking human. "So are you going to surrender, or do we need to take more drastic actions?" I said. I flashed my Sharingan with chakra, making my eyes illuminate in eerie red-eye preparation to cast Jinjutsu on them. "Speak up, villains," said All Might. They flinched as they finally recognized their situation and wisely surrendered. After they've been cuffed by the police, the media swarmed. "All Might, is there any relation between you and Madara Midoriya? Is Rikido, Madara? Is there any truth to the rumors about you?" The same happened to me, and while intellectually I was prepared for this, and I have had previous experience with the media, I did not expect them to swarm like they did. Thankfully All Might took pity on my situation and placed a hand on my shoulder while asking for the media to quiet down. "This is my new intern, Rikido, whom you might have known from the UA Sports Festival as Madara Midoriya. Excuse us, there is still much to do today," said All Might. It was a bit degrading being picked up like a sack of potatoes and having to deal with the air pressure that All Might was creating as he leaped out of the crowd of reporters. Thank God that I decided to leave the gun by at home. Speaking of which, I really need to up my training. I may be powerful, but this situation showed that I lack true finesse in using that power. Sometimes, stealth isn't an option, and all my techniques have so far proven to be highly destructive to the point that I never actually used them outside of training. I can't roast people alive like Endeavor because even with All Might endorsing me, that would turn popular opinion against me, and that is very much needed if I want to offer the world a stable alternative to the symbol of peace. We ended up on the rooftop of another building and to my eternal shame I had to sit down. "Are you okay, young Madara?" asked All Might. "Yeah, just give me a moment," I said, panting. Jesus, I never expected the media to act like this. I honestly thought that they would attack me if I even so much as spoke a single thing. All Might looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. "It's the price you pay for being famous, you'll get used to it," said All Might. "So what did you think of your first case?" "It was interesting," I said. "I just realized that I have very few non-lethal techniques at my disposal, and those that can be made non-lethal are just too damaging to the surroundings." All Might nodded and I continued. "I have to work more on my Jinjutsu. Being able to cast illusions with eye contact is all well and good, but I could have knocked out all the villains in one go if I had other types of Jinjutsu. Besides, using fire, earth or water styles in a confined environment is dangerous for the other people and especially the civilians, and they would have been out to a much greater risk if I had engaged the villains in hand-to-hand combat, to say nothing of the fact that I don't know what their quirks are." I finished. "Don't beat yourself up too much, young Madara. Nobody expects you to be perfect in every situation with barely a month of training," said All Might. True, but few had the expectations placed on them that I had. Even if I could bear it was still frustrating. I've had chakra for close to 11 years now, and I still haven't managed to get all 5 nature transformations under my belt. True, this was an impressive skill even by Naruto world standard, but then again, I don't have repositories of jutsu and weapons to use. I don't have the almost 1,000 years of knowledge that the shinobi of the Narutoverse had. I also don't have access to Fuinjutsu or even the slightest idea on how to recreate it, and that makes my overall battle efficiency decrease even further. Especially given the delicate situations that I would more than likely find myself in, since I doubt there will be any big battles between heroes and villains anytime soon that can help me fine-tune my techniques. In the end all I had was my wit, a somewhat second-hand knowledge of chakra and stubbornness. But then again there were people with less that have become great. "Okay, let's continue with the patrol," I said. We patrolled the streets for another 2 hours. I solved some more cases, even if they were mostly purse snatchers and the occasional robber. All Might did nothing most of the time and just sat there looking proud and cheering me on. The media ate it all up and I tried to keep a happy-go-lucky front on the entire time and not brood like an edgelord, cough Sasu cough. Being faced with all that media, using the Uchiha secret art of brooding was very tempting. After those 2 hours were up, All Might and I went back to his agency, which was by now swarmed with reporters. I had training to do and All Might had paperwork in PR. I must get wind style down in a month or so and create some jutsu for it until the final exams this semester. If I'm lucky I should be able to make some progress with lightning style by the time the provisional license exam rolls around. 1 more week of this. Hopefully nothing bad happens. I just jinxed myself, haven't I? I really must think these things through cause this shit ain't gonna cut it anymore. Let's recap, shall we? I woke up this morning at Might Tower bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to head out and patrol with All Might for a couple of hours and then come back and resume training. What I didn't expect to happen today was the fucking internet to literally explode. Absolutely every news outlet in this country is covering the story, and pictures of mine and All Might's face are everywhere. Pictures of me and All Might flying through the air, All Might cheering me on as I punch villains in the face and return purses to old ladies, are making rounds though every social networking site, more so because I'm the first intern All Might has had, ever. Even worse, every conspiracy theorist in the world has popped out of the woodwork spouting theories, their spin on theories and debunking theories and other shenanigans. I mean, this is just unreal. Everyone has their own ideas of who and what I am, and that ranged from government experiment gone wrong, government experiment gone right, and the most twisted of it all, that I'm All Might's illegitimate son or some variation on that theory. Even Izuku isn't free of scrutiny. Thankfully we already submitted his quirk as hyperpower and said that it was a stockpile of the same energy I used that happened to not show up in childhood, and it was now bursting with so much energy that it hurts him to use it. This neatly explained away his previous quirkless status and his sudden gaining of One for All, as well as any injuries he may receive when using the power. I just realized something. When Izuku's going to have his sport festival, he's going to have to use his strength, and parallels will be drawn between his and All Might's power, and with me in the picture, that will be seen as confirmation of the Dad Might theory. God damn it, and fuck the media. Endeavor was quietly brooding in office while looking at the news. Fuck All Might and fuck him for not thinking about this possibility. It was obvious that the boy was All Might's son. Sure, he may not look like it, but that power was too great to be anything but All Might's genes at work. Although it was somewhat odd for the boy to have so many abilities, but his quirk was registered as energy manipulation, and while it was deliberately vague, it did match what he knew about All Might's quirk. The elemental part of the quirk was a bit weird, but that might just be a mutation that occurred in him. As he thought more about it, Endeavor only grew angrier. The boy was powerful, no doubt, but he was also very smart, possibly taught by David Shield himself, and judging from his academic performances that was looking highly likely. He was the same age as his greatest creation, Shoto, but Madara completely eclipsed him in both power and intelligence, and that made Endeavor truly angry. The only consolation to this was that the younger twin brother of that boy was lacking compared to his sibling. Lower intelligence and dangerous defective power, he was just waste that they kept around for the sake of the media. Still, just how All Might managed to hide his spawn Endeavor would never know, but he had to make Shoto use his power, and soon. Madara was already a year ahead of him, and Endeavor knew he won't stop growing. Once more Endeavor cursed himself for not allowing Shoto to take the recommended exam this year. In a darkened room sat a man with tubes connecting to his face to keep him alive. He was watching the news with a pensive expression on his face. This was unexpected. Master, came a raspy voice from one of the screen speakers. Yes, Tamura. Did you see the news, Master? That All Might, he's making a successor. The man wore a pensive expression on his face. This situation was truly unexpected. He supposed that All Might was truly making a successor, but one this skilled. Such display of martial prowess takes decades to learn, and that would mean that the boy had been in training since early his childhood. Training that would be particularly harsh. This did not fit All Might's style at all. We must strike now, Master, before he gains more rep points. No, Tamura. We must wait. The Nomu isn't yet ready, and the heroes are cautious. That boy and his family will be protected. You will get your chance for revenge, Tamura. That seemed to mollify the other, and the conversation was terminated. The man stood in silence as he contemplated this new development. That child was special, no doubt about it, and for once in a long while the man known as All for One was surprised. Still, it won't be long before All Might passes on One for All to his true successor, and he can finally put his plan into action and bring down the man that destroyed him. He will have his revenge. In another dark room, a thin man in a light gray suit was replaying one of the videos caught during that day about All Might. On another screen was the first page of a news outlet with the title All Might's heir. Pillar of Strength. For the first time in a long while, Mirai Sasaki, also known as Sir Night Eye in the pro-hero community, was at a loss. A couple of months ago All Might had called him to tell him that he had found a successor in a quirkless middle school student. It was unthinkable to Sir Night Eye that a middle schooler could possibly succeed All Might as the symbol of peace. Furthermore, he already had his eye on a UA student with a suitable quirk and the right kind of personality to succeed All Might. He even invited him to be his intern in order to teach him how to use his quirk better. Permeation was a valuable quirk that would have aided All Might in his fight with All for One. Then came another surprise. Madara Midoriya's speech at the sport festival. No one had ever announced their desire to be a symbol, or in his case a pillar. What's more, that boy had crushed all his competitors at the sport festival in an impressive display of power. Could he be the one All Might had spoken about? No, he couldn't be, his powers were too diverse, and he had a quirk since childhood. Dread came over Night Eye. What if he's an offspring of All for One? But if that was the case, then why did All Might take him on as his first intern ever, giving rise to rumors about the two? Even the way they acted made them seem to be close, and they weren't doing anything to quell or dispel the rumors. Night Eye needed more information and he needed advice. "Hello, Gran Torino-san. Have you seen the news lately?" "I see. I'll pick you up later today." All Might was tired. He still had to do his paperwork. It was just the second day of young Madara's internship, and he was beginning to see just how exhausting it was to be a mentor for such an event. Previously he hadn't taken an intern because he was too busy, and then his injury got in the way, but Madara was a special case, even more so than his brother, young Izuku. His desire to be the pillar of strength came from a logical standpoint that was correct if a bit arrogant. Madara truly was the only one alive capable of competing with the bearers of One for All and All for One. No other human alive was that potentially powerful, and no other quirk had the sheer versatility that chakra possessed. All Might had seen a snippet of Madara's power and prowess the day before and more today. There were few situations where young Madara was useless, and those were quickly becoming scarce as he developed new techniques to deal with them in the future. Even a mere 2 days have drastically improved Madara's effectiveness in the field, and should such progress continue, All Might was sure that young Madara would be ready to take the final exam at the end of the year and graduate from UA, thusly becoming the youngest pro hero in history at just 15. Were it any other child, All Might would have protested it, but he had the feeling that Madara was much older than his body made him to be. Even so, he looked to be older than 14. There were none of the boyish traits that were found in his brother. Still, it galled All Might that Madara was sorely needed. All Might was stubborn, but even he could see the writing on the wall. His power was decreasing rapidly, and it would be years before young Izuku was truly ready to take off as his own hero. As Madara himself had said it, he was the best shot the world had at a peaceful transition between eras. And now he had to deal with his mentor and former sidekick. Great. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," said All Might. 2 people walked into his office. Sir Night Eye, his former sidekick, and Gran Torino, the friend of his master and mentor. "Ashinori, you're even more decrepit than last time I saw you," greeted Gran Torino gruffly. All Might paid no mind to his insult. He was used to his mentor's sharp tongue. "All Might, we would like to discuss something about your intern," said Sir Night Eye. "Please, sit. What do you want to know?" said All Might. "Firstly, we would like access to his records. His powers are too diverse to be the product of a single quirk," said Night Eye. All Might narrowed his eyes. So, this was they were thinking. He somewhat expected it as he himself had once asked the same question. "He isn't that man Spawn if you were asking." "I know because I checked." That seemed to surprise them. "Then are you sure that he didn't develop that quirk naturally? Maybe he has some connection with One for All?" asked Gran Torino. "It really isn't my place to tell. If you meet with him, I'm sure that he could decide if he wants to tell you himself," said All Might. "You're putting an awful lot of faith into that child," said Gran Torino. "Indeed, All Might, this is careless. He's just a boy. What secret would he have that would require him to not trust adults with it?" said Night Eye. "The kind that doesn't concern you," Mirai Sasaki said, a voice from the ceiling. All Might along with the other 2 looked up at the intruder into their meeting. Madara was casually standing on the ceiling like it was normal. The bigger question in All Might's mind was how he avoided their senses. After all, they were still pro heroes. So you're the kid. You don't look like much," said Gran Torino. "I could say the same for you, old man, but we both know that would be false," said Madara as his eyes bled red and his Sharingan activated. Gran Torino grinned at the kid as he held his Sharingan gaze. All Might, for all his power, could never truly resist looking straight into those eyes for long. Those were powerful eyes, and their wielder made careful use of them. "Madara Midoriya, we would like to ask you some questions," said Night Eye as he fixed his glasses on his nose. "Oh?" said Madara, cocking his head to the side. "What about then?" "About your connection with All for One and your quirk that allows you to use such varied abilities," said Night Eye. Madara stayed silent for a moment before he started to fall from the ceiling and flipped around to land on his feet. "I have no connection with All for One. In fact, I only learned his name a month ago. And as for my quirk, well, I don't trust you enough to tell you," said Madara. Night Eye looked like he swallowed a particularly sour lemon. "Why would you say that, kid?" "All Might trusted us enough to tell us about One for All," said Gran Torino, being genuinely curious. "You were best friends with the previous One for All, and Sir Night Eye has been personally trained and fought by All Might's side for years." "I am not All Might," said Madara. "And yet you still want to replace him," cut in Night Eye. They fell silent. So, this was what they were getting at. All Might understood. For all his coldness, Night Eye was a fanboy that could rival young Izuku in his fanaticism, and while he had advocated for All Might's retirement in the past, that was more so he could preserve the once great All Might. In a way, Night Eye had taken to the same point of view as the world civilians when he looked at All Might. Seeing All Might, the symbol of peace, being replaced by anything but a carbon copy was probably galling Night-Eye. Still, All Might understood his own folly in creating the symbol of peace. No one could be a god and, in a way, that is exactly what All Might was in the eyes of the public, even if they did not realize it. Toshinori Yagi was just a man, and he couldn't keep up the image of the invincible symbol of peace anymore. That was why Madara was needed to take away the burden that rested upon All Might's shoulders and be the pillar that supported society. Even so, All Might knew that it was a stopgap measure, and he didn't doubt the fact that Madara knew it too. It was the best they could do until someone came up with a solution to their problem. I wouldn't call it replacing him, after all no man can truly replace All Might, said Madara, giving voice to his thoughts. They were all silent for a moment. You are different than Nana and Toshinori, said Gran Torino. Are you saying that as if it's a bad thing? Madara asked. Gran Torino laughed. Hell, no. I'm curious to see where you go from here. The sound of combat was heard throughout one of the dedicated sparring gyms of UA. Along with that were the cries of a young boy as he was fighting and failing to beat his teacher. Still, the boy did not let up and used what could be considered pure determination to stand up. Aizawa was impressed with Izuku Midoriya. True, he may not have the natural talent and power of his older brother, but he did share in his determination and his nice single-minded pursuit of self-improvement. An admirable trait, really. Okay, that's enough, kid. Take a break and eat something, said Aizawa. Okay, sensei, said Izuku as he flopped back down on the mat. As Aizawa watched the kid walk away from the training mat, he felt a hint of pride swell within him. That kid was truly something special. He still remembered the day that All Might and Madara came to him with the proposal to train Izuku. At first, he was reluctant to agree. Izuku Midoriya was, in his mind at least, still a young child not yet ready for such intense training. He was just entering puberty, and while he had a good athletic base, hand-to-hand combat abilities and no truly bad habits, making it easy to mold him into an excellent hand-to-hand combatant, he was still too young. Then Madara dropped the bomb onto him. He explained the reason why he was helping his brother to go through this hell training, and why Madara pushed himself so hard to gain more power. All Might was on his last legs. Due to an injury he had sustained, he was left with a perilous time limit on his power of only 3 hours a day, and that would not last for long. Still, that only explained why Madara was pushing himself so hard. He was for all intents and purposes All Might's heir, and the man had it in him to survive for maybe another year when he would be taking his UA teaching position. After a silent argument between the two, Aizawa was told a secret that many would kill to know. It was not Madara that was to inherit All Might place, but Izuku. The boy that was chosen by All Might himself as the successor to his quirk. And wasn't that a surprise? One for All was a fitting name. The power passed down from generation to generation through 8 users to fight against the ultimate evil All for One. Izuku Midoriya was selected to be the 9th holder of this power that would grow even stronger with him than it had with All Might. He accepted, of course. That boy needed as much training as he could get, that much was painfully obvious. Izuku was smart, of that Aizawa had no doubt. One does not simply remain stupid when they share most of their genetic makeup with a genius, and even if they weren't twins, it was doubtful that Izuku would have ever remained stupid. Madara would not have allowed it. Still, Izuku had somewhat neglected to train his body, only beginning any sort of real training at age 12 and under the constant cajoling of his brother, not that he blamed the kid too much. Madara was one of a kind. He was one of the few people that were capable of the sheer strength of will required to withstand the kind of self-training that he had put himself through from an age as young as 6. Izuku needed to make his body stronger to house and master the power that All Might possessed, and then work on increasing it for his own successor. In Aizawa's eyes, their original plan to clean the beach had some merit, but it was useless for what they truly wanted to accomplish. Oh sure, it would help build muscles, but it also came with risks when lifting heavy objects. Also, that training schedule was focused solely on muscle building and body strengthening, with a spattering of spars against Madara for hand-to-hand combat training, something that was woefully insufficient for what they were hoping to accomplish. Aizawa could see it from day one that Izuku would never become as physically strong as All Might. He would be able to punch with the same force, sure, but he was a speed fighter with a body better fitted for a precision martial artist than a brute of a boxer like All Might. Sheer brute force was not something that suited Izuku. It was something that Madara failed to truly see, but Aizawa couldn't blame him for that. Madara may be a highly skilled combatant, but he was still too young and inexperienced to be a teacher, and thusly couldn't see that Izuku needed special mobility-enhancing conditioning meant for gymnasts and acrobats, much like his own style. It may even go so far as to require a completely different style of martial arts than what All Might uses. It was still too early to tell. Still, Madara had done more than anyone would ask of him and managed to beat into his brother the basics of taekwondo, Krav Maga with a spattering of kickboxing and judo techniques to boot. Even as he was now, Aizawa was confident that Izuku could win against any first-year hero student without their quirks and even beat some with quirk usage allowed. It also helped that Izuku seemed to be close enough to his brother in intellect that he managed to devise plans and strategies in seconds. For once in his life, Aizawa was thankful that at least one of his promising students wouldn't end up a muscle-bound automaton media whore. Nobody really appreciated the strategists. This is, of course, excluding the overpowered problem child that was currently beating up villains under the supervision of Gran Torino. I felt drained. The entire internship week had been a public relations nightmare. Sure, I participated in a lot of low-level cases, and All Might gave me as much exposure as possible. Heck, even Gran Torino pitched in to help with some drug busts and gang dismantling. Sir Knight, I was a work in progress. It really pissed me off when he dismissed my brother as being someone unworthy of One for All, and I took a great deal of pleasure in reminding him that it wasn't his decision to whom One for All goes. He left quickly after that. Thankfully Gran Torino seemed a tad bit more understanding, and I actually get along pretty well with the old man, though for some reason All Might has this overly frightened look when he saw us grinning at each other after a good spar. Gran Torino is exactly the kind of teacher I need to further my skill in using chakra. Heck, I even stopped wind-style training and focused entirely on what the old man had to offer. Don't get me wrong, All Might is a great teacher, but I don't need someone to teach me how to bring out the full power of my ability. I need someone to teach me how to refine its use into a sharp point. After all, what use is a fireball to take down a villain if you end up blowing up half the building you are in? I even managed to develop a few jutsu that should help later down the line. Coming back to school after that was something. Before we left, I had an argument with All Might about telling Aizawa-sensei about One for All. All Might was, of course, reluctant, but the thing is we can't afford to second-guess our allies like this. The UA staff is among the most trustworthy people I know of. I know this because I had background checks done on all of them before I even applied for the entrance exam. They don't know this, of course. What? It's not paranoia if they're truly out to get you. Still, if all goes well, I should be able to graduate at the end of the year, and that will put Aizawa-sensei in the perfect position to be the homeroom teacher of my brother's year. He needs to be aware of the dangers that Izuku will attract, even more so now that both he and my mom are in special protective programs. Somehow Mom has seen fit to rope All Might into having dinner at our house every night. I like this new change. The house seems livelier, and Toshinori-sensei seems to smile, truly smile more often nowadays. Even I've become livelier. Previously I didn't spend that much time with my family. With Izuku, sure, I spent a lot of time with him, but I distanced myself from my mom a lot. Maybe it's some residual resentment from when I was little, or maybe she was just being overbearing and I couldn't handle it, but since I came back from the internship I've spent more time with my entire family than ever before. Still, I had to prepare myself for the first batch of exams. They will be relatively easy since my previous high school diploma waved away a good chunk of the tests I would have been required to take. Here's the thing with hero schools. In many regards they function as privatized military academies. Places like Shiketsu take it a step further than most, but all schools receive subsidies from the government based on the number of heroes they produce and their success rates. Looking at it like this, it is easy to see why UA has reigned as the undisputed king for hero schools. All Might and Endeavor, these are the top 2 heroes and their UA alumni, as well as many top 100 heroes. After all, the Hero Commission itself originally started life as a military organization. My situation in this entire system is special. The Hero Commission is painfully aware that All Might isn't as invincible as the media portrays him to be, and when they heard about me, my close relationship with All Might and my level of power, they were somewhat relieved and instantly jumped on the conspiracy bandwagon to help solidify my claim as successor to the symbol of peace. They were helped in this by us not denying the rumors about me being All Might's successor. They somehow managed to hype me up as an alternative for All Might, so when he moves out of the public eye and I step up to the plate, the citizens will understand that All Might wants to retire and I would be there to act as their support once he does. His teaching career at UA would serve as a transition period and a way for All Might to have a hand in personally training Izuku during his schooling years. Still, it's tiring. I must be out and about almost constantly patrolling the streets, usually as a tag-along for All Might, so in that regard it's as if my internship never truly ended. It's not like it's that much of a big deal. I managed to increase my chakra reserves a bit and make my shadow clones more durable, so if need be, I can simply send a shadow clone as All Might's tag along. It's not like these low-level criminals that we're constantly busting can pose a threat to it. After coming back from my internship, I spoke with Nezu to see if I could be allowed to take part in the support course classes. This is mostly so that I can get a license to build my own support items. I mean, honestly, besides a marginal increase in computing power, material sciences, robotics and energy generation, this world isn't that much more advanced than my previous one. Oh, sure, their genetics research is miles ahead of where it was 200 years ago, and the same is true for their medical technology, but besides that not much else has changed. There should have been space colonies at the very least, if not true interstellar travel. I have begun designing a new suit of armor made from state-of-the-art carbon-reinforced titanium alloys, and I've begun testing the chakra conductivity of different materials in the hopes of finding the correct alloy to make a sword out of. I wish to try making a sword out of them, since the gunbai is a tad too big for what I needed. After all, few situations require me to even use jutsu, since it's simply easier and more efficient to knock out my opponents by only looking at them. The gunbai will remain in my vault until I need to really blow something up. Alongside the armor itself, I'm going to begin my work in reproducing crystal-based computing. I know what you're thinking, crystal is too fragile to use in an armor, but that all depends on the type of crystal used. For most photonic computers it's best to use some sort of silicon-based crystal, but I managed to change that so that except for the actual nanocircuit lines embedded in the crystal, the rest can be any material you want, such as synthetic sapphires or diamonds. Add to that the lightweight nature of such computers, and you can easily have a computer powerful enough to hack UA in the palm of your hand. Enough of that. I need to go back to training. I've got wind style down, and I can go on to do lightning style. Lightning style chakra armor, here I come. The final exams were easy enough. After all, I had one written test and a practical battle against a teacher. For some reason none of the teachers were keen on going up against me, so in the end they settled for sending All Might against me. My goal was to either capture him or escape through a gate at the other end of the training ground. Right now, I was standing in front of the entrance to training ground B along with Aizawa. "Well, I'm ready," I said. "Go on and do your best, even if I know that I'll regret it," said Aizawa. I smiled and gave him a thumbs up while he looked at me as if I'd killed all his hopes and dreams. You know, his usual expression. I walked into the training ground as the horn sounded the start of the match. I didn't rush forward, and instead I used my Sharingan to check my surroundings. It wasn't long before I noticed a wall of air coming towards me. Shit, earth style. Earth wall. The wall of earth came up quickly enough to save me from the air blast, but it was soon smashed to bits and I was sent flying back. Well, hero. Here to defeat me, are you? I hope you can put up a better fight than this, said All Might. I must admit that guy can pull off the villain role quite well. I grinned as I wiped spit from my face, my Sharingan shining an unholy red light as I let loose my first dose of killing intent. "Oh, you're on," I said. I charged chakra though my body as I lunged at him, cracking the ground beneath my feet. All Might replied in kind, aiming his punch to my torso this time. I dogged it and let the Rasengan that I'd secretly charged before striking his arm, redirecting the blow to a nearby building and obliterating it. I'm not yet strong enough to go up against All Might in a straight-up Taijutsu fight. Thankfully I have other skills that I can use to deal with him. I flash-stepped in front of him and before he could blink, I locked my eyes with him. Sharingan Jinjutsu. Paralysis. I jumped back. Give up. You know that you can't escape my Jinjutsu, I said. "Ah, that's what you think, young Madara, but you're not the first one I've faced with the ability of illusions," said All Might as he launched himself at me again. I was stunned and only barely managed to flash step away. That's unexpected, but somewhat predictable. Still, to escape a Jinjutsu of the Sharingan with such ease is mildly disturbing. But then again, all I had to base the effectiveness of my techniques so far have been low-level thugs, and even against my previous spar with All Might, I had not used Jinjutsu. Well, shit, it seems like this will turn out to be an ninjutsu battle after all. My body flickered out of the way of another attack and I began waving hand seals. Water style. Water ball, I called out. I spat out 5 decent-sized balls of water that in the end only served to damage the surrounding buildings. All Might was charging up for another attack. Okay, then let's try something else. 2 hand seals and a great fireball was sent down range and exploded into a ball of fire. All Might dodged, of course, but it bought me enough time to work through the next set of head seals. Wind style. Air bullet. The attack hit All Might in full while he was in the air, sending him crashing through a building. He came to a stop as I finished my next set of hand seals. Earth style. Mobile earth. The ground on which the building sat suddenly rose like a door from the ground and flipped the entire building into another. That sparked a domino effect that destroyed a good portion of the training ground. All was quiet for a few moments. "I won?" I asked out loud. Just then, All Might burst forth from the building with a nasty expression on his face. Shit. I quickly replaced myself with some rubble as I begun spewing fire and wind-style attacks at All Might. The guy dodged them, but he came out looking more ruffled than usual. I was so focused on hand seals and molding chakra that I failed to notice that All Might was working his way towards me. He managed to punch me in the gut so hard that I went flying through a building. Thankfully I was able to reinforce myself with chakra before he hit me, otherwise I would be in a world of hurt more than I am now. Impressive, young Madara. You have truly grown since the last time we fought. Unfortunately for you, this is the end, said All Might. Damn it, I can barely move. I don't have the time needed to launch large-scale attacks, and the only thing that would work on him right now is lightning style, which I don't have mastered. I looked up and saw a skyscraper balancing precariously, no doubt damaged by my previous barrage. Wind style. Wind slash. I sent a blade of wind to its base that will hopefully allow it to collapse. It did collapse and straight on All Might at that. I picked that time to withdraw. I can't win like this, and my only other safe option is to evacuate. That might be the best option of the bunch. I can send a shadow clone to the exit and have it make preparations for a replacement with the main body. But I have another option. This one though, comes with greater risks. The strategy is untested, but if it proved to be effective, I could bring down All Might. Just the thought of that makes me giddy. First, I create a shadow clone and send it on its way. Then I use a special technique I began developing to channel pure yang chakra through my body. It helps speed up healing, but it wasn't true medical ninjutsu yet. I had only 7 minutes left, so I needed to be quick. I found All Might in the middle of the ruined street I recently fled. He was close enough to the exit that should I try to run, he could intercept me. My body flickered behind him. Hello there, I said. All Might turned to me surprised, only to be punched in the face with a stone-encased chakra-enhanced fist that sent him flying though a building. Ah, I've waited for so long to use that line. Now let's see if I can achieve the high ground. I began waving hand seals as All Might burst forth from the building and launched himself at me with air pressure. Ha! You can't defeat me, hero. Bellowed All Might. Yeah, right. Keep dreaming, old man, I was just getting started. Fire style. Great fire destruction. I yelled. A massive cone of fire spread ahead of me. The fire was so hot that it began melting the buildings and turning the ground into a lava field. All Might managed to escape, but not before he forced me to move by chucking debris at me. I can't see him, so that means that he retreated. I look at my watch and see that I have 5 more minutes. More than enough time. Meanwhile, All Might was seriously reconsidering his choice in life that led him to this fight. Shit, that kid has really gotten stronger. I would really hate to have to fight him at his prime. I used my sensory ability to find All Might and Flash stepped in front of him. You're not getting away that easily, I said, and I punched him. For a fraction of a second our eyes crossed, and I smirked. Got you. I ducked under his return punch and dogged a kick, or eyes crossing again for barely a second. All Might tried to kick me again but missed. I grabbed his leg and used it as leverage to slam my knee into his chin, making him stumble back. All Might looked at me with disbelieving eyes, and I just grinned. He had no idea what was going on. What I did was relatively simple. It's a new taijutsu style that I've begun developing. Since I only recently had the opportunity to use my Sharingan in battle, I've been tweaking my strong fist style to better work with the Sharingan's predictive abilities. In this case I took this a step further and I've begun actively using the Sharingan's visual genjutsu abilities to cast subtle genjutsu on my opponent. It's not enough to be noticeable to anyone but another high-level chakra user. In the case of those without chakra or any experience with illusion abilities, nothing would seem weird. After all my genjutsu does is alter the perception of the world slightly. It just so happens that slight difference is all it takes for my opponent to make mistakes. And mistakes against a chakra user means defeat. I pushed on, coating my fist with earth nature chakra to make it harder. I ducked under his punch and retaliated with a punch to his gut that made him spit out blood. I then swept his legs and jumped on him as he fell. I mentally sent the command to my clone to activate the jutsu, and the ground beneath us turned to mud just enough for All Might to sink a bit and become immobile. All Might gasped and looked at me with wide eyes. I grinned. Night. Sharingan genjutsu. Sleep, I said. My Tomo spun as they waved the genjutsu. I could feel All Might resisting, but I kept our eyes locked and I poured more chakra into the technique until he finally fell asleep and returned to his normal emaciated state. The horn sounded. Winner, Madara Midoriya, the voice announced. I took All Might out of the ground and hauled him on my shoulder in a fireman carry. Fighting All Might is really draining, but I'm not that big of an asshole to leave him out there. After the fight and after All Might woke up, I had a meeting with Aizawa and Nezu to review my battle with All Might. So, how did I do? I asked. You passed, overpowered problem child, said Aizawa in his usual bored monotone voice. "Ha, I haven't lost a fight like that since I was training with Gran Torino, oh god," said All Might as he began shivering and looking around the room. Somehow, I could swear that I heard an ecchi call from Gran Torino to All Might. "Okay, then am I good to go?" I asked. "Yes, you'll be allowed to take the provisional license exam in September. Until that time, we have allowed you to use the school grounds as training sites," said Nezu. "Thank you very much, Principal Nezu," I said, giving a bow. This was huge since I won't have to drain my savings account to buy a large piece of land in the mountains so that I can train jutsu and lightning release. Well anyways, I'm off to bed. I may not look like it, but my chakra is almost empty, though that is to be expected after one has fought All Might. I really need to up my chakra capacity to allow for longer duration engagements. The provisional license exam is normally held twice a year during the summer, and I was scheduled to take part in the one happening at the beginning of September. The remainder of summer was spent training lightning style and wind style. I managed to get a solid grip on the first and fully master the latter. I'm still in the early stages of making the Chidori, but what I have now is more than enough to deal with anyone I may encounter. After I defeated All Might in the practical exam, something that only happened because we weren't trying to kill each other, I was invited to Island to partake in the expo there. There really isn't much to say about it. The whole time I spent socializing with the other heroes, posing for the media and establishing relations with powerful people. I did get to meet Endeavor though. He seemed to be scouting me for his agency. Yeah, that's not happening in 1,000 years, especially since All Might has this annoying habit of dumping more and more of his agency's paperwork onto me. Honestly, if I didn't know better, I'd say that All Might want to take me on as a sidekick. That is not happening. I will never be someone else's sidekick, even if it looks that way to the media. After all, what man that bears the name of the legendary Madara Uchiha while wielding the famed Sharingan would submit himself to such a lowly task? Okay, that's a bit much, but you get the point. It was fun on the island, even if David Shield was sending me odd looks. I tried to get a meeting with him, but between my busy schedule and his we didn't have the time. I hate all this politicking that comes along with being a hero. Honestly, you would think that this career path would be at least somewhat sheltered from all the bullshit that is politics. Unfortunately, I know better than anyone my age just how much political power heroes have. Let's have a little thought experiment, shall we? If at the time of an election it gets leaked that one of the major heroes, this meaning the top 10 or so, dislikes or disagrees with a politician or party, then the fanbase of that hero will mostly vote against said party. It's not that much of a problem in Japan, where there is a clear rule against such things, but in other countries, having the popular heroes on your side is an almost guaranteed win against any political opposition. That's not to say that there aren't factions in the hero circle, but they are mostly formed around agencies, and leading those agencies are the top pro heroes. This neatly leads me back to the political shitstorm I unknowingly inherited. By this point it's clear that I am the successor to All Might. Someone saw the two of us duking it out during my exam, not that we were very subtle with all that destruction going around. The video is blurry, but it still went viral, and thusly the world now knows that I am capable of going up against All Might and being able to hold my own, something that not even Endeavor can claim. This, coupled with All Might's increasing absence from the world stage and my increasing appearances on it on top of my connections with Might Tower, has led the hero community to believe that All Might is retiring and that he's been building me up as his successor. It's something that we plan to confirm after I take my provisional license exam. So, to sum it all up, I just got the proverbial keys to the most powerful faction in the hero community, All Mights. There is already a boom in Rikido memorabilia, and I'm slowly starting to gain my own fan base, and this is before I even managed to get my provisional license exam. I tailored my design to be that of a slightly edgier All Might, so that instead of bright spandex and big grin, I wear armor with intricate patterns in dark colors, and instead of All Might's signature grin, I put on a smirk. It seems to have done wonders to attract the younger generation to my banner. That, coupled with my easygoing nature when dealing with the media and the fans that accost me almost constantly, and you have a recipe for success. Add to that a good deal of All Might's fan base, and All Might himself on top of that, and you have one of the most powerful factions in the hero community, at least PR-wise. Enough of that now. I'm currently standing in front of Kobe National Stadium in full battle gear. Usually each school would come with a busload of students to take the exam, but since I'm special, I get to take the exam alone, which is kinda shit. By the looks the other hero students are sending me, I'm getting the feeling that I'll be their first target. Shit. You okay, problem child? Asked Aizawa. Huh? Yeah, I'm okay, why are you asking? I asked. You seem to be thinking quite deeply, and I know you enough to know that means you're worried about something, said Aizawa. Yeah, I am. The looks these other kids are sending me, it has me on edge, I said. As it should, said Aizawa. Huh? There is somewhat of a tradition here. At the beginning of the exam the other schools band together to crush UA. It's called the crushing of UA, and you especially are at a distinct disadvantage, said Izawa. Because of the sports festival, right? I said. That's partially correct, and because you place yourself in the spotlight as much as you do. The other students are bound to be particularly bitter about that. And on top of that you don't have any allies that you can rely on, said Izawa. I nodded. This makes sense, I am alone here. There are no allies to watch my back this time around. Not that there ever were. Ever since I was born into this world, I walk this path alone, and the only support I ever had is what I built myself. Izuku is the one that helped me the most by introducing me to All Might, and then I built myself as someone worthy to be his successor. I hope that I can live up to the expectations the world has placed on me. Well, no time to think about it, I muttered to myself as I began to walk towards the entrance. Kid called out Izawa. I turned to look at him. Good luck. I smirked and gave him the thumbs up. We were led in a big room. It was somewhat crowded as more than 1,000 Hero Corps students from different hero schools were in the room. I was the only one from UA, and I could see the others singling me out. My suit was almost instantly recognizable to anyone that has watched the news in the last few months, and whomever happened to not recognize me would surely see me as a target by the wide berth the ones that did recognize me gave me. Soon enough a man that looked like he could use some rest came up to the podium. Welcome students to the Provisional Hero License exams. I will be one of your evaluators. My name is Yakimura Mara, and I will be explaining this exam to you. The exam will be in 3 parts. Firstly, you will have to reach the safe house we have set up on the other side of the stadium while carrying this tag. Whomever loses it is out of the race. To enter the safe house you need 2 tags. There are enough tags scattered across the stadium for 2/3 of you. You can also take tags from your fellow examinees. After all, the hero business is a competition. Information on the other challenges will be provided to those that finish the first task, said the man. The room began to shake a little as the walls and roof fell away, revealing that we were in an arena with 4 different zones. A city zone, an industrial zone, a mountain zone and a forest zone. Our safe house's location was currently unknown. And start, said the man. The horn sounded, and I immediately put some distance between me and the rest of the students via a body flicker. It proved to be the right thing to do as the position I was in was instantly assaulted by students. Still, the majority of these students were a good 2 to 3 years older than me and had much more experience than I did. I may be able to go toe-to-toe with All Might in a controlled and known environment, but this was something different. Quantity had a quality of its own. The vast majority of the student turned towards me, seemingly ignoring all their rivalries that I'm sure schools have. Well, if it isn't the star of UA, said one of the students that, by the look of their uniform, came from Shiketsu. Oh, and what about it? I asked back. My Sharingan was already searching for targets among the mass in front of me. I could sense that they were trying to surround me. I flooded my body with lightning nature chakra. I wasn't quite yet ready to use the famed lightning chakra armor of the Raikages, and honestly I still had a ways to go before I could even reconstruct it, but even this relatively small action brought me from contending with All Might speed to beating it, even if just barely. Still it won't be long until I'm running along at light speed like the Raikages. I wonder what the media would say when the vaunted genius disciple of All Might fails to gain his provisional license, said the same guy. So sure, are you? Of your success? I asked. He laughed. Look around you. You may have beaten the others of your year at the sports festival, but you're in the big leagues now, kid. Everyone here could have done the same, he bragged. Of that I have my doubts. Even first years weren't quite so defenseless as to be unable to take on a single quirked individual, even if they are more powerful and have more experience than them. Of course there are exceptions to this, but those only apply to people with truly exotic quirks. I remained silent and the guy's smirk fell. So that's how it is, no matter. Attack. He yelled. Almost at once the entirety of the students attacked. I managed to dodge the first wave of long-range attacks, and I made a few hand seals and spat out a dozen beach ball-sized balls of flame at the incoming mass of what I assumed were close-quarters specialists. The attack had the desired effect of dispersing them and allowed me to close the distance and take out a couple and snag myself the second tag that I needed to complete this task. Still, the attack didn't let up, and as I tried to escape my escape routes were constantly cut off by pillars of earth and an annoying bastard with a mutation that allowed him to reach my speed level in short bursts. It was clear that I was getting hemmed in as the others seemed reluctant to directly attack me. Probably in an attempt to wear me down. A shame that my chakra reserves have reached cage level in these last few months of training. They'll run out of stamina long before I do, but their number is a problem. Let's see if I can scatter them and forge a path. With a few hand seals, several plasma balls were sent racing towards the front lines when their trajectory was seemingly diverted by the guy from Shiketsu that was taunting me earlier. They were rendered ineffective and I need a plan to deal with that guy. Earth style. Bedrock shunt. The ground rumbled as it moved away from me. A lot of the students lost their footing, making them sitting ducks for my next attack. Water style. Water dragon bullet. I held the last seal as I needed my chakra to draw water from the nearby lake and form it into its supposed dragon shape. Once it was done, the dragon let out a ferocious roar and then dived for the battlefield, overpowering the other elemental quirk users and cutting a swath of destruction through their ranks and inundating the area. Lighting style. Lighting bolt, I yelled. I moved my lightning chakra-coated palms and let loose 2 streams of electricity from them and directed it to strike the area previously hit by the water dragon. The result was the instant paralysis of some couple hundred students. These people can take the punishment, so I don't have to hold back as much. I quickly moved to take advantage of the confusion and disappear into the city. Once there I searched for an office building and laid low. I then created a shadow clone and had it transform into a bird. Apparently shadow clones can fully transform since they are only a bubble of chakra held together by their creator's will. All in all, it made for an excellent scout when in trouble, and best of all, pigeons were quite common in cities, so nobody will give it a second glance. And now for the tricky bit. I powered up my computer and the holographic screen popped up in front of me on my arm. On it was displayed a map of the terrain that I managed to snag via hacking a military satellite. What? Did you expect me to go this blind? Honestly, if you ever fight fair, then you're doing something wrong. On the map were a few moving dots that indicated the people I've tagged while we were moving to enter the testing area. My head snapped up. The shadow clone sent me a packet of memories that showed a pretty consistent group heading for my location and not fighting amongst themselves. What's more, they seemed organized. I don't know enough about the other schools to recognize their uniform, but they were clearly led by someone well versed in strategy. It was obvious from their formation that they were wary of an attack, but they seemed to be headed straight for my building. I frowned. With a simple body flicker, I was on the roof of the building next to the one I was previously occupying. My sharp Sharingan saw one of the guys that looked like a wolf turn his head to my new location. So that's how they were tracking me. Earth style. Earth destroyer. I slapped my hands down on the building and manipulated my chakra in such a way that it will cause the collapse of the surrounding structures, thus trapping the poor sods in, and with all that dust in the air, Wolf Boy won't be able to smell me. Time to go anyways, my shadow clone has located the safe house. I flooded my body with chakra and vanished in a body flicker, only to reappear in front of what was supposedly a bunker. I inserted the 2 tags into their required slots and stepped in. There were a few students inside. All commotion stopped when I walked in. I never think that I'll get used to being gawked at. It was 2 hours later that the same guy from the beginning of the exam appeared at the podium that was placed in the room. Now that you're all here, I'll tell you about the second stage of the exam. In this part you will have to rescue some hostages from a team of villains. The hostages are actors from the Help Us company, and they, along with the substitute villains that belong to several hero agencies, will evaluate your actions and score you based on your effectiveness and minimalization of collateral damage. The final test is a surprise that will be sprung on you during the exam. Your task for now is to bring the hostages safely to the designated area, said Mara. I see, so this is a rescue operation with an unknown element to it. Possibly to test our adaptability and reactions to an unknown threat while on a rescue mission. The hostage situation is probably so that they can see that we're not the rash types, since any wrong moves can spell disaster for the hostages. I should probably make a team, but I don't really know how to go about approaching anyone about this. I was socially awkward in my previous life, and while putting up a fake front for the media and fans is something I rehearsed, making friends is not something that I can do easily. No, it's probably for the best to go at this alone, anyone else might slow me down. I body flickered out of the room and back on a tall building. Using my sensing skill, I pinpointed an area of high target concentration and went for it. Returning to normal speed, I allowed my Sharingan to fully drink in the sight before me and break it down. The hostages were held up in an office building, at around the middle. From what I could sense there were 3 of them and 4 bad guys. Easy enough to handle. There were 2 bad guys next to the hostages and the others were patrolling near the stairways and entry points to the floor. I jumped onto the glass and stuck to it via chakra. Using precise wind-style chakra, I cut a hole in the glass and I went inside. From there on it was easy going. I have a good deal more mobility and stealth than any of these people, so it was easy to take down the 2 on patrol. After that it was a straight shot to the room where the hostages were held. The hostages appeared to be a couple with a child. I breached the door with a flash step. The villains didn't even have time to react as I crashed into them and knocked them unconscious. I turned to the family and smiled. It's okay, you're safe now. Are any of you injured? I asked. My Sharingan was deactivated because it scared people. I learned this while on my internship. These eyes are good for looking cool, but not so good for trying to calm down civilians, unless I want to put them into a genjutsu. No, thank you, replied the guy. The response was somewhat clipped. Before I could say anything else, I heard a siren wail through the stadium. Attention participants, the third phase is now beginning. Villains have infiltrated the arena in force and are moving to take hold of the designated area for hostages. Your task is to get the hostages to safety by any means necessary. Shit. I turned back to the couple. Can you walk? We need to get going, I said. We're okay, said the woman as she took the child by the hat. Honestly, I have no idea if it is a child or a midget, but whatever. I looked out the window and saw the street swarming with villains. Okay, new plan. Are any of you afraid of heights? I asked. They looked at each other in bewilderment and shook their heads. I formed the iconic cross sign, and 3 shadow clones popped up, each one picking up one member of the family. Hang on tight. I dived out the window and crashed into the middle of the mob of villains. Water style. Waterfall. A torrent of water washed over the street and the still confused villain substitutes, granting my clones the time needed to jump and disappear into body flickers towards the area with the other hostages. After I dealt with some of the stragglers, I too headed there, and I arrived just in time to see Endeavor land at the head of the mass of villains. His appearance shocked the exam takers. As you can see, the pro hero Endeavor has graciously accepted our offer to test this new format of the exam. Your task remains the same, and don't worry. He won't be going hard on your said Mara. I landed between Endeavor and the other exam takers. Go. Get the civilians out of here. I yelled. That seemed to do the trick as the other students all formed up began evacuating the hostages, while leaving me to deal with the number 2 hero. This will be difficult. Endeavor is a whole other kettle of fish than All Might, and I'm already down a bit of my reserves. I can't afford a prolonged ninjutsu slugfest with Endeavor because who knows what's waiting for me going forwards. Hopefully my water style is enough to deal with him. Huh, so you're All Might's brat, said Endeavor. Man, I wish I had my gun by right about now. I did not answer and dropped in a combat stance, chakra swirling though me and augmenting me the best it could. Endeavor seemed to take this as an invitation to attack, and he let out a torrent of flame from his fist. My hands flashed though the necessary seals. Water style. Water wall. Water from the ground rose up to counter the flame, and they left behind only steam and smoke. It was fortunate that my Sharingan detected movement in the smoke and that I managed to dodge Endeavor's flaming fist. I jumped back. I'm not making this a close-range fight unless I have to. Earth style. Earth wall. I slammed my hands on the ground and behind me a tall wall of earth emerged from the ground, blocking access for the rest of the villains to the other students and civilians that were escaping. Endeavor looked surprised at my action. So, you were willing to sacrifice your life for the others, he rumbled somewhat unsurprised. I wouldn't call it sacrifice. After all, I have no intention of losing, I said. He huffed and I ran through a handful of hand seals, bringing the final one to my mouth and inhaling a lot of air. Fire style. Majestic flame destroyer, I roared. Fire bloomed from my mouth and spread in a blanket across half of the stadium. The fire was so hot that it melted the ground and buildings that stood in its way. Endeavor tried to counter it but was blown out by the sheer force of the jutsu. The rest of the villains were somewhat protected by their suits, and because most were fire users themselves, they had some immunity to the flame, but they too had to scamper off lest they be turned into charred meat. Still, there were casualties. Fortunately, no one died, but quite a lot of people got burned. I kept my technique up for a bit, and when I stopped, the area in front of me was turned to a lava-filled trench, and half of the industrial zone was molten and deformed, and some trees were still on fire. Just my luck that the announcer ended the exam then and there. Judging by the looks of shock on the examiners' faces, I can quite confidently say that I may have overdone it. Still, the socked angry constipated expression on Endeavor's face as he saw the aftermath of my jutsu was worth it. In the next part, you'll get to see exactly what type of power One for All is, and All Might will be reduced to a crying mess because of his 2 OP kids. On 200 likes, part 2 will be uploaded. Now, you guys should watch this fanfic. Just click on it, I will see you all there.